All right, Mr. Best, let's get started.
Welcome to the September 5th Arlington County Transportation Commission meeting. Item 1 is citizen comment on matters not on the agenda. We have no speakers for item 1. Item 2 is demographic profile 2019. This is an information item, and we're lucky this evening to have Elizabeth Hardy here to give you an overview.
Good evening. Thank you for having me back again. As Richard said, my name is Elizabeth Hardy. I'm with CPHD on the research team. I'm demographer for the county. I thought we could start off by doing a little quiz. So I have three questions here. So let's dive right in. Arlington has a density of 14 persons per acre. What is the density of the Roslyn-Boston corridor? 25 persons per acre? 44 persons per acre, or 70 persons per acre? Any brave people? Any takers? C. The answer is B, 44 persons per acre.
I can leave now.
Question number two, how many people moved to Arlington in 2016? 30,000, 100,000, or 50,000?
30.
The answer is A, 30,000. And finally, what percent of residents live within 1 mile of a metro rail station? 25, 55, or 40%? That's correct, 55%. Very good. Okay, so all of this and more can be found in this year's version of the profile. Each of you have a copy there at your desk. And we have a redesign. You notice it's a little different than we have done in previous years. The profile has actually been around since 1982, and that document has changed over time. But we found that it really didn't tell Arlington's story. It reported some data, but we could do a better job at that. So we revamped the profile, adding more statistics. We added about 50. We doubled the number of statistics that are in the county profile. And we also, it's used for multiple purposes. It's used for marketing, and it's also used for data. So how do we create one document for both purposes? So we did that by adding more data and meaningful graphics. And then continue to be the main source for Arlington's official statistics. So we added more information. We gathered administrative data from other departments, and we included that this year. So again, more data. These are departments that have influenced the profile. We've enhanced it to have cut sheets. So as you can see, I'll go through these, I guess each of them together. The cut sheets, we have more interactive elements, and then all the data is available on data as well. So if you notice, the profile is designed 2 pages per topic. So each of those topics also serves as a cut sheet. So there's a transportation section. If you're going to a meeting and you need information, you print out those pages or take it with you and have very handy information right at your fingertips. We have used Power BI to do infographic data by corridor. And then again, open data is available on the website. So I'm just going to run some of the highlights very quickly. Half of Arlington's population live in planning corridors, which makes up 22% of Arlington. If we look at housing type by corridor, we can see that the majority of housing type in the corridors, no surprise, is multifamily. And the majority of households in the corridors are 1 and 2 person households. Employment, 60% of jobs are located in planning corridors. If we actually include the Pentagon and a national airport into this number, it goes up to 84%. And we have journey to work flows. A lot of residents are going to DC for work, but we have net flows from all other jurisdictions to Arlington. We also are reporting on commercial and residential GFA by corridor, so you can see that use mix by corridor. We have enhanced it to include APS data and schools data. 62% of APS students reside in one of the 3 planning corridors. I'm sorry, outside. Sounded wrong. You reside outside of the 3 planning corridors. Transportation, we're using data from Transportation's own survey. and we reported the weekly commute trips by mode. For community services and resources and health and wellness, these are some new information. Parks. 90% of residents live within a 10-minute walk to a park. And the health and wellness, including Department of Human Services data, that section is all new this year in the profile. So Arlington ranks as the number 2 healthiest county in Virginia. In terms of forecast, we have outlined that by year, by corridor, by forecast variable type. And that's all on the back side of the forecast sheet, so that's a lot more information than we had before. So 85% of Arlington's population growth is forecast to occur in the planning corridor. And if you have any questions or want more information, feel free to call me or email me anytime. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Lanton.
Not really a question. First, I love this. I've used it for years, so it's a great resource. The only nit that I have on it is I'd like to see more comparisons going from like 2010 to present, so we can compare trends, because you're right. Census data tells you stories, and moving that way is exactly the right thing to do. Want to do that? But I think we have amazing stories to tell, and they become more clear when you have an easy way to compare the trend lines. And a number of these things lend themselves very well to those trend lines. So I'd like to see more of that. You have it in a few places. I love seeing that. Just do it more.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No.
Concur and just say, please keep coming back. This is a fantastic resource, and your presentation is very welcome here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I concur as well. That 30,000 people moved into Arlington in 2019 is an interesting number, but it's more interesting when you know, is that high compared to the past? Is that low compared to the past? Like, where are we? So thank you very much.
Sure.
The next item, number 3, is the Census 2020, and we will have Elizabeth again for this item.
Sorry, you're stuck with me for another one here. Yeah. So the census is coming. We're working on it as an effort throughout the whole county, throughout the whole region, throughout the whole state, and the whole country. So I just wanted to go through and give you guys an update on the census and what's going on and what you expect over the next year. So I'm going to play this short video.
Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
Oh, didn't know that was going to come up. Okay. So decennial census, right? That's a lot of data in the profile is really based on the decennial census. So it's very important. It occurs every 10 years. I'm sure you all remember where you were last time and how you filled it out. And it's a complete count of all the population housing in the country and territories. Very important for representation. Federal funding for Arlington to get our fair share, and for understanding how our community grows, how our needs change, and have enough resources to provide for our community. In terms of federal funding for Arlington, on an annual basis, we receive about $50 million from grants that are related to decennial census data. That's anywhere from 20 million for HUD grants. Transportation is about 5 to 10 million, just depending on what projects are in the works. So we really depend on that federal funding that relies on census data. So the census is a little different, as you might have picked up in the video. This is the first time that people can respond online. Invitations, not forms, invitations we mail out to everyone March 12th to participate, to go online, to call, or to call and request a form to fill out the census. This is the first time they're doing this online. So we have a hard-to-count community that we're traditionally focused on, but now, since it's online, we're really driving it for people to fill it out online. I think we're expanding that hard-to-count community to almost all of the population. So there'll be 4 additional reminders coming to your house, and then paper questionnaires will be mailed out eventually. Paper questionnaires are only available in English and Spanish, and Spanish is only available in some areas. And then if you still no response, an enumerator will come to your home, knock on your door up to 6 times to get your census, your response. So that's the plan from the Census Bureau to enumerate the population. Responses online, by mail, and by phone. One response per household. So our goal is to really drive that self-response. That's the best way to get an accurate count, and complete count is to drive the self-response, and not wait for an enumerator to come and knock on someone's door. We have a complete count committee made up of 42 residents and staff serving as census ambassadors throughout the community. Our co-chairs are Wanda Pierce and Elise Ortiz, and we have county and school board liaisons to our committee as well. So part of our outreach, we are searching for census partners. We want every group, every organization in Arlington to become a census partner. Every commission to become a census partner. So that we could, so you could inform your members, your people that you reach out to about the importance of the census and how their information will be used to help Arlington's community. And becoming a partner is easy. We'll have customized training to learn about the census. You'll receive regular updates and information, and we'll also be able to provide information fact sheets and that information pertinent for Arlington as well. So all you have to do to become a partner is to sign up at the census website on Arlington's webpage, and you'll just say that you'll share information with people in your network, and then encourage people to be counted during the count season. We have partner trainings coming up, and we would like someone from whoever signs up to be a partner to come to that training, or partner groups. There's one in September, one in November, and there's a RSVP URL down there. But the importance is to reach out to organizations to make them census partners, so we can give them information so they can be the trusted voices in the community to really reach those hard-to-count populations. I didn't go into a lot of detail. That was just a basic overview. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of, and you might have seen it at the county fair. The whole county fair was themed Arlington Counts. That was for a reason. The 2020 census, it's coming up next year. So if you have any questions about the census, about what we're doing, I'm happy to answer that. Yep.
Thank you very much. Any commissioner questions? All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, Commissioner Rice, late breaking question.
Just a quick question. Is there, I guess, a plan? I agree. I think everybody needs to be counted, and there's certain branches of the federal government that don't want to ensure that. So obviously at the county level, we step up and fill the void. What is, I guess, Arlington County's plan to make sure that everyone is counted? You said that you were at the county fair, it's all well and good. But the hard-to-reach communities, is there an outreach plan to go to the Civic Association? Because not necessarily a hard count place, but no one's reached out to my Civic Association. So I just want to know if there's a plan to do that, to actively go to meetings and encourage these partnerships.
Yes, there is a plan. Brian Helfer is my co-director in this event, this year-long event. We are going to as many events as we can. We have a core staff team that is 4 county employees, and then we also have the Complete Count Committee, who is broken down into 4 groups. We have the Hard to Count group, a partner group, donations group, and communications group. And they each have action plans that they're going to execute to make sure everyone is counted. So we are going to, I think we have gone to some civic associations, so if we haven't been to yours, let's connect and make sure that we can get there. We would love to have every civic association be a census partner. We are going to, do some demographic maps to understand where are the main pockets of the hard to count communities, focusing a lot of outreach there. But a lot of ideas have floated all the way from county fair to involving Girl Scouts. They sell cookies. Count the cookies. And they sell cookies during count season. So, we have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of grassroots efforts going on throughout the county to promote this. Hopefully, you will see census everywhere come February, March next year.
And I'm not sure if we have a copy of this presentation, but if we could, I'd love the information specifically related to the partnerships.
Great. And you also have a palm card at your place, you should, and that should have a link on it too for partners. That's it. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Our next item is item 4, the Community Energy Plan Update. This is an action item, and we have Rich Dooley from DES to give you an overview.
Good evening, Chairman Slatt, and to all commission members. Appreciate the opportunity to come back. Once again, I was here in July prior to the Community Energy Plan going to the County Board in the July County Board hearing for a request to advertise. This presentation will offer a bit of background once again, just as a reminder as to what the Community Energy Plan is, why we have it. And then also we'll talk about some of the changes that have occurred to the CEP that you saw most recently, what has taken place since then, since July. So again, the Community Energy Plan is that long-term vision looking out to the year 2050 on all things energy, how we generate, distribute, store, and use energy. It was adopted in 2013 as part of the county's comp plan. And we have added energy equity as the fourth lens through which we look at the Community Energy Plan implementation efforts. And that again is added to the energy security, economic competitiveness, and environmental commitment that were the 3 previous lenses through which we looked at implementation matters. And again, the goal here is to mesh energy planning with smart growth, including effective transportation planning and the implementation of the MTP, as well as effective land use planning with effective general land use plan implementation. Speaking of implementation, we've been successful during the last 5 years. This is a rundown of just some of the success stories, we'll call them. In regards to APS, I want to make note also, since we just started the new school year, the Alice West Fleet Elementary School, we can add to the list of net zero energy schools. That elementary school is designed to be net zero. We will see through the course of the year how it actually performs, but we are encouraged because Discovery Elementary School, designed by BMBL also, was successful in achieving that net zero energy status. For those interested, we do have a solar co-op, and that is a solar PV co-op for homeowners as well as people who are interested in electric vehicle chargers. And so that co-op is available right now for people to subscribe to become part of, and to take advantage of essentially bulk purchasing to save up to 20% on those solar PV installations as well as electric vehicle chargers for their homes. Due to the work of the county staff, including the AIR team during the last 10 years, we've been able to now every year save close to $5 million because of those various initiatives brought about because of the Rethink Energy team. We've also been able to drop our greenhouse gas emissions during the last 10 years by 24%. And there you see some other statistics that we make mention to in terms of success stories. To break it down even further, it shows here the buildings are a large part of the equation in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions, which are now, as of 2016, at 9.1 metric tons of CO2 equivalent per capita per year. And there you see transportation comes in second in terms of the breakdown of those greenhouse gas emissions. Another way to look at it is here, showing transportation at around 36%, and buildings account for just under 60% of those greenhouse gas emissions, with the rest of it coming through with solid waste, and then also county government operations accounts for 4%, and that has been holding steady over time. One of the requests at the county board meeting in July was to take into account that hatched-in area. This is affectionately known as our wedge graph that was updated in July. It shows on the left-hand side of the graph our baseline year of 2007, where it was 12.9 metric tons of CO2 equivalent per capita per year. The 9.1 is where we're at as of 2016. And the far right-hand corner at the bottom is where the county board, back in June, if you remember June 25th at the county board work session, asked county staff to design a plan to get us to carbon neutrality by the year 2050. The numbers you see there on each of the wedge graph pieces designate the percentage of activity that will get us to that 100% of drop from the earlier readings. It's also important to note that the dashed line at the top of this is business as usual. Taking into account that Arlington County is likely to grow in terms of its population, number of jobs, number of buildings, and all of that is going to result in increased energy use if we do business as usual. But if the grid gets cleaner, we increase the amount of renewable energy resources used here in the county. Also, the buildings become more energy efficient, as does the transportation sector. And last but not least, the hatched area constitutes emissions being dropped by carbon sequestration, and other methods and technologies that heretofore we have not forecasted, but between now and 2050, we anticipate new and emerging technologies will take hold and help to drive down our greenhouse gas emissions that extra 14% to bring us to the carbon neutrality aspirational goal. This highlights, the next two slides essentially highlights the primary changes to the community energy plan since you saw it in July. Again, that wedge graph was changed and updated to reflect both the 100% renewable electricity goals for the county as well as for the community, incorporated into the modeling, as well as noting that hatched area constitutes 14% of our effort to reach carbon neutrality. In addition, we heard from this commission, as well as other commissions and community groups, to make a greater reference and importance to meshing the transportation planning, the land use planning, and the community energy plan all together. And so we did make added text to make explicit references as to how that was going to happen, for instance, through the use of site plans, and to ensure those site plans carry forward the aspirational goals that we have built into the community energy plan. In addition, a lot of groups were mentioning that natural resources need to be taken into account, such as trees, and the importance of trees to help combat the urban heat island effect, as well as to sequester carbon and capturing that carbon and holding it in place. And so we did add additional information on trees, tree canopy, and the use of natural resources in biophilic design.
in the community energy plan. And then also, we have a companion implementation framework, and a draft of that has also been included as an attachment to recognize that a plan is a plan, but we need to go ahead and implement it. And that will be further expanded once we get guidance from the board through an adoption of the changes. We'll further expand that implementation framework for each of the strategies noted therein. Last but not least, we had two policies, one updated as policy 4.3, and then policy 5.5 is once again a reaction to comments we heard at the county board and elsewhere to make further reference and importance to the county's activity in making sure county projects are using the facility sustainability policy, which is an administrative regulation that county staff can reference when they go ahead and design those county facilities. So that's policy 5.5, and then policy 4.3 is probably of most interest to this group. It is referencing a blueprint strategy that staff will endeavor to make by the year 2022, and that is to provide a game plan and, as it says here, a blueprint on how we will transition the county fleet away from vehicles with internal combustion engines. So there's a lot of activities built into developing that blueprint, and noted there are some of the things that we will take into account as we go ahead and develop that blueprint over time. Once again, here are the 6 goal areas, and on the right-hand side, we did have district energy in the 2013 plan. That has been replaced by a resilience chapter, incorporating some of the elements that were described in district energy, and then expanding upon that. And with that, that's the end of the formal presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And thank you again for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. Do commissioners have questions? Commissioner, go ahead, Commissioner Boucher.
I just want a clarification, so the really just adding addendum, policy 4.3 and policy 5.5. Is that correct? I just want to validate that you primarily just adding these two addendums, policy 4.3 and policy 5.5. You're updating them, is that correct?
Policy 4.3 was in there, but it has been revised in terms of text, and then 5.5 is brand new, and those are the two new policies.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Those are the new policies since July. Right.
5.5 is a new one, 4.3 was there, but was worded differently.
But the overall update changes is more than that from the previous version of the community energy plan. Is that correct?
Yes, and we covered those other changes in the July discussion here.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lantome?
First of all, I want to thank you for making clearer the link between land use and energy efficiency. I think that's a real positive move forward. That's really a fundamental thing to energy efficiency, is how we use our land, how we get it around. So thank you for that. I do have a question about our transitioning over to away from internal combustion. Shouldn't there also be a concomitant policy to be purchasing the electricity to run our electric vehicles from renewable sources only? Because it doesn't really help us to move from an internal combustion engine to an electric vehicle that gets electricity from a coal plant. I don't think that really helps a lot. What we do want to do is to using them and encouraging and renewable energy to charge those cars, those vehicles.
So that's very true, and the two new policies that we mentioned back in July are two new policies in the renewable energy chapter. Number one is for the county activities. The county will go ahead and strive to become 100% renewable electricity by the year 2025. And then the community to go to 100% renewable electricity by the year 2035. There are many ways to go ahead and to achieve that, but I think that gets to your point, that that's what we're striving to do. So they're working in concert with one another.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question on the updated 4.3. When we're talking about the county fleet, would you say that includes Arlington's ART bus fleet and APS's school bus fleet?
Yes, all that is in play, and we are having and continue to have discussions with APS And yes, it's important to note that the fleet for the county is quite a challenge because you have regular sedans, but then you also have things like road graders. And so this is going to be technology dependent, and as is noted there, there are many different variables that are going to be in play as we develop a blueprint and a methodology on determining how we're going to go ahead and do that transition. All of those things, and then some, are going to be part and parcel of the blueprint moving forward.
Great. Anything else from other commissioners? Great. This is an action item. I move that the Transportation Commission recommend that the county board adopt the attached resolution to update the community energy plan as outlined in our county board draft agenda dated September 21st, 2019.
I'll second.
It's seconded. Any comment on the motion, discussion of the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right. So that passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bad at count, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1. I was absolutely about to. Would you care to expand, Commissioner Boucher?
I think the policy 5.5, in my opinion, is too unwieldy. I don't know really what it means. I'm not sure. You don't have that timeline on it. I'm really having a problem with that one. And that's why I wanted to make sure that was new to this overall. And this is how long is this plan? 5 years, 10 years? The first one was from 2013 to 2018. So I guess that's 5. So this will be from 2019 to 2024.
Right, every 5 years, we have a built-in 5-year marker to go ahead and check. And I'm happy to further explain 5.5 if you would like.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Vote's taken. Thank you, Mr. Dooley.
Thank you so much.
The next item is item number 5, Met Park 6/8 site plan. This is a site plan info item. I'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brian Earl with CGF Architects. As the architect and as a resident of Arlington County, I'm very excited to be here tonight to share with you and give you an overview of the Met Park project. Over the past year, we have spent a great deal of time studying this site, working with county staff and the community through an extensive engagement process, and we look forward to hearing your comments here tonight, as well as when we come back as an action item in the future. Before diving into the proposal, I did want to give an overview of Amazon's path of growth in this neighborhood. Just so everybody's familiar aware of it, so it's envisioned in three stages. The first stage, which is already begun, is occupancy of about 580,000 square feet in Crystal City. This is in existing buildings, one of which is being retrofitted and reclad as we speak. The next two phases are in Pentagon City, including what we're here to talk about tonight, Metropolitan Park. Includes 2.1 million square feet, and then the third stage, which is Penn Place, which is another 2.1 million square feet. The ability to have a concentrated location that can accommodate 25,000 employees in an easily walkable environment between the buildings was of critical importance in the selection of Arlington and of these sites, and will provide the opportunity to create a unique and special place that integrates with the surrounding community. Looking at Met Park specifically, this was master planned in 2001, and it was envisioned as an urban, walkable, transit-based community of 8 buildings surrounding Central Green. Since then, 5 of the 8 phases have been completed, Met Parks 1, 2, 3, and then the Bartlett, which is phase 4 and 5. And then we're proposing to complete the circle, if you will, complete the rectangle with phases 6, 7, and 8. Today, that site is occupied by a one-story warehouse and surface parking. Access to those warehouses is off of Eads and 15th Street with numerous curb cuts, 11 in total. When you take a look at the Metropolitan Park Plan, you can see that arrangement of what is currently approved on the left and our proposal on the right. So we're consistent with those guidelines. We're completing the streets as envisioned, creating a walkable neighborhood. We're also adding additional open space and considerably more retail to enhance that pedestrian environment, which we'll go through. This is looking down on the site. And here you can see the two buildings. So Met Park 6 is on the right as a single building. We'll call Met Park 7 and 8. That's phases 7 and 8 is a single building, totaling approximately 2,150,000 square feet of gross floor area, which includes 65,000 square foot of retail and the remainder being office. Below that, in between the buildings, is a four-story below-grade parking structure that includes 1,950 spaces, approximately, as well as on the ground floor is a series of loading docks with a total of 17 spaces. We're also anticipating a considerable amount of bike parking for this facility, 500 employee or what we call long-term parking spaces, and then 120 visitor spaces around the exterior of the site. I'm going to walk you through that arrangement here. So we've turned the page a little bit on you. North is to your right. The Bartlett, which is where the Whole Foods is in the bottom right corner there. That's north towards Pentagon. You can see Met 6 in the middle and Met 7 and 8 on the right. And what you'll notice here is that we've really focused to develop the ground plan of this to maximize the pedestrian experience. We've pushed the loading docks to South Elm and to 13th Street, opposite the existing loading docks of the Bartlett and of the Gramercy. And what that does is it frees up the ground plane for active uses in all areas. We've clustered a series of active uses along the park, including building lobbies, a proposed daycare as a community amenity, as well as the entrance to our ground floor bike rooms for easy access in and out. And what that does is it frees up the entirety of 15th and East Street for active ground floor retail. Over 65,000 square feet of which is more than twice what was called for in the Met Park guidelines. So before turning it over to Dan Van Pelt from Brookside, let me give you a walk around the site so you can envision what we're talking about here. So this is the corner of 15th and Eads. This is literally where Pentagon City meets Crystal City. This corner, this is the juncture where we're stitching together two neighborhoods. You can see from this how the building's massing steps down towards 15th Street and the lower densities to the south. It also pushes back and it highlights the new entrance we've created on 14th Street to provide access to the park for the community. The base of the building is expressed as a rich terracotta cradle that complements the surrounding masonry buildings of Met Park. And into that is inserted a little bit more exuberant glassy tower with colorful fins. Now I'm going to zoom in even more. We'll walk around the base of the building so you can see that pedestrian experience we've spent a lot of time working on. We're going to start in what's in the lower left corner of this, which is the corner of 15th and Elm. So this is that corner of 15th and Elm. You can see how the building tapers down from 22 to 14 to 3 stories. That 3 stories is really critical. It's the exact same height as the buildings across the street. In the foreground, above what is a continuous expression of ground floor retail, it's a 700-person meeting center that will be used by Amazon for programming and also be available for community events in the evenings. Coming back around, we're now back on 15th and Eads, and here you can see that stitched corner and the richness of the terracotta cradle that's expressive and full of retail, and then as a counterpoint to that, you see the colorful fins beyond. Walking down East Street, this is a real great amenity for you we're seeing here. It's a broad, 12-foot wide sidewalk with retail on one side and a series of active rooms on the other. We're very fortunate. We have a 35-foot setback from the street, and we're looking to maximize that and create a wonderful pedestrian experience. Here, as we move down, we're now at 14th Street. We're moving into the Met Park. You can see the active retail on either side and the rich terracotta cradle in the building. Step back and announce your access to the park. A couple things I want to highlight here. Along East Street is a buffered bike lane that we are enhancing and providing additional protection for. And also, we're proposing on 14th Street curbless environment to allow the public spaces that we're creating, both in existing Met Park and two new plazas that we're building. In fact, I'll show you those right here. Two new plazas that we're building to stitch together and create porosity of pedestrians moving across for things like fairs on the weekends, food truck festivals, farmers markets. So we're very excited about how this provides that opportunity to engage in the neighborhood. So here again, we're on 14th Street. We're inside the park. We're looking back at the buildings. And then you can see the two lobbies as a focal feature here, that broad horizontal wood expression as a porch that's welcoming visitors. Frames the park and creates a shady place you can enjoy outside on a hot summer's day. I'm going to hand over the mic to Grove Slater in just a second. Before I do that, I'm going to walk you through all of the streets around the site and what those sections are so you can envision them. They are all consistent with the master plan. And the existing streets are largely unchanged from what they are today as far as the street section. I'm going to start with 15th Street. So here's 15th Street. On the right is our project, and on the left is the existing loft development. So we're maintaining all the existing travel lanes and bike lanes and parking. And then our building is set back approximately 19 feet from the curb line to the building, which provides room for a tree pit, 10-foot clear sidewalk, and a 2-foot shy building zone. This is East Street here, and we're continuing to do a good bit of work on East Street, specifically as related to the bike lane, working with county staff on the exact arrangement of that and how it functions. Create the best experience possible for bikers. The travel lanes, again, have stayed consistent with what's out there today, with a parking lane on either side, 4 vehicular lanes, two vehicular lanes and a middle turn lane. And we have the buffer bike lane and that broad 35-foot wide section of sidewalk that creates a great pedestrian experience. And part of the reason for that is that there's an existing storm lateral that services all of South Arlington. Underneath that sidewalk, and that's why we're maintaining that clear zone as a critical way to maintain county infrastructure. This is 13th Street, so this is the street between the Bartlett, which is on the right, Met 4-5 as we call it, and our proposed Met 6. This is exactly the same width as it is today. It's a little broader than a few of the other streets in Met Park to accommodate trucks that come into and out of the Whole Foods. Their loading dock is on the right. We have two travel lanes, and then we have a turn lane that allows traffic to freely flow out onto East Street. And then again, that typical 15-foot section of a 5-foot tree pit and a 10-foot clear sidewalk. This is what we call East Elm Street. This is the road that borders between Met 6 and the park. This is one of the first ones we're showing you of the curbless environments we're proposing. So this entire street is flush between the sidewalk and the road with an integrated curb line. We have two travel lanes and 7-foot parking lanes. Those parking lanes are deliberately a little narrower in places to and promote that pedestrian experience. Parking lanes are typical of the county, are buffered by tree pits and then a 10-foot clear sidewalk. This is South Elm Street. So this is the street that is between the Gramercy on the west, which is on the right, and our project Met 7-8 on the left. Again, this is a street that has loading docks on either side with two travel lanes. And as you approach 15th Street, what becomes a turn lane, consistent again, 10-foot sidewalks, 5-foot tree pit, and then a shy zone that varies along its length. And then this is 14th Street, narrower. We've eliminated the parking on either side of it to create an easier pedestrian flow across it with two travel lanes, again, curbless environment, tree pits, 10-foot clear sidewalk, and then the dooryard in this varies considerably based on the angle of the buildings to allow porosity and people to come into the park. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan to walk through the rest of the details of the project and give you an overview of it from a transit perspective.
Good evening. Thanks, Brian. Again, I'm Dan Van Pelt with Grove Slater Associates. I'm going to walk you through some of the transportation highlights of the project, pick up on some of the other elements of the transportation review and the study that was done. The location of the HQ2 site here in Pentagon City was chosen in part due to many of the multimodal amenities that are already available in the area. The site is well suited to this type of use because of the proximity to two metro stations, the Pentagon City and the Crystal City Station, VRE Station, numerous bus routes, and a pedestrian and bike network that's already established, and further enhanced by this project. As shown in the slide, there are 16 bus stops within a quarter mile of the site, two of which are being upgraded as part of the project. These stops are served by 18 local and regional bus routes operated by WMATA, ART, Fairfax Connector, Loudoun County Transit, and OmniRide. The site is surrounded by pedestrian destinations, including Whole Foods directly to the north, Fashion Center Mall to the west, Crystal City to the east, and retail destinations throughout the area. Many of those destinations are shown on the figure to the right of this page, or this slide. Pedestrian facilities will improve as part of this project with the proposed streetscape improvements, public plazas, the pedestrian-oriented treatment of Elm and 14th Street within the site that Brian just described to you, the new signalized crossings that are proposed at Eads and 13th and 14th Streets and 15th and Elm. The site also completes the street grid for Metropolitan Park, allowing porosity for all the nodes and break up the large block that exists today. There are other regional improvements, including the Route 1 grade project, which will also improve the pedestrian experience between Pentagon City and Crystal City. And most of the office lobbies will be located on the second floor, so that's going to help activate the street fronts by creating more retail space on ground levels. So coming into the site itself, pedestrian circulation will extend around both buildings of the site. Elm Street, 14th Street, again, are being designed as curbless and shared streets to encourage the bike and pedestrian travel and minimize the vehicular trips on these streets. This will allow pedestrian flow between the two buildings that are accessed from 14th Street between Elm and Eads, and Brian's. It's always tough for all the architects who show pretty renderings, but I think Brian's rendering captured that pretty well for us. The jump elevators from the street to the garage are also located adjacent to the lobby of Building 7 and 8. And there are separate entrances on the ground, at the ground floor for the bike rooms. So segueing into the bike facilities, there are a number of bike facilities that already exist near the site. There's buffer bike lanes along Eads, bike lanes along Hayes, 18th Street, 15th Street, Crystal Drive, there's other sign routes in the neighborhood. There's proximity to two capital bike share stations. There's proximity to the Mount Vernon Trail and 4 Mile Run Trail is not too far away. There are several planned county improvements. Some of the ones near the site that will continue to improve the bike facilities are the Army Navy Drive Fleet Street Project, which is going to implement the cycle track from Joyce to 12th Street. And then there's the Eads Street Complete Street Project, which will provide enhancements along that corridor. And so as part of the Met project, the team is working with staff to develop plans for the bike lanes along Eads Street along the project frontage. So given the importance of the bicycle trips to the site, bike circulation is expected to occur on every roadway surrounding the proposed buildings. Again, the bike parking is being provided at the grade level with dedicated bike entrances in each building. Bike facilities are going to exceed the standard, the county standard bike site plan conditions. For proposed long-term commuter bike spaces, there are 346 that are required, 500 spaces are proposed. For short-term bike parking spaces, we're meeting the county requirement of 120 spaces. Showers are proposed to exceed the county requirement, 23 are required per gender, proposing 29 per gender. Lockers will also exceed county requirement, 70 are required, we're proposing 750. Speaking to the curbside management, the TNCs, the Transportation Network Companies, Ubers and Lyfts, there's a pickup and drop-off area. This is something that we discussed with staff. That's proposed along South Eads, near the intersection of 14th, so those pink areas that are labeled rideshare on Eads. There's on-street parking. The majority of the rest of the street will be largely on-street parking, as shown here in blue. There are far-side bus stops, and we're discussing with staff about the location for those. Those are shown in yellow. There will also be space provided on East Elm Street for office and daycare pickup, and that's also shown in pink on East Elm Street. So access to the parking garage is provided at two locations. There's one on 13th Street and one on South Elm Street. The underground garage will be connected, and it's going to serve both buildings. Office parking is provided at a ratio of approximately 1 per 1,100. This is consistent with the reduced parking policy for office buildings. And this is a total of approximately 1,885 spaces. The retail parking is also provided in the garage with a ratio of about 1 per 1,000, and this is about 65 spaces. As Brian discussed earlier, two separate loading facilities. In Building 6, we'll have 3 berths. One of these will accommodate a 40-foot tractor-trailer. Building 7 and 8 will have 4 berths, which will also, one of those will accommodate a 40-foot tractor-trailer. And the loading provisions exceed the county requirements to ensure that buildings needs can be accommodated within the site, within those loading areas. 3 new traffic signals are being proposed. The specifics of the signal installations at each of the locations is still in discussion with staff. But the proposed signals at 13th and Eads and 15th and Elm will help serve vehicular flow to and from garage access points and will also provide opportunities for signalized pedestrian crossings. One additional signal is proposed at 14th and Eads and will also provide signalized pedestrian crossings at this location where high pedestrian volumes are anticipated to cross multiple lanes of traffic. We believe the signals are appropriate treatment in this urban design context, particularly on South Eads near the buildings' entrance and lobbies. There will also be geometric changes at the intersection of 15th and Eads, and that's going to require modifications to the signal, and we're still discussing those changes with staff. So a multimodal transportation assessment was completed for this project. It was scoped with the county. It included an extensive study area from the 395 hot lane ramp to Eads to the north, down to 18th Street to the south. There are a total of 31 intersections, including the new streets that are created by the project. The analysis factor included approved development near the site and planned roadway improvements, including Route 1 to grade project at 15th and 18th Street. The multimodal aspects of the site are very important to the project, and the mode split assumptions reflect this. The majority of the site trips will be via non-auto modes, as indicated in the AM and PM period mode split pie charts that are shown here on the slide. Our analysis identified signal timing phasing or cycle length adjustments to 8 intersections for both the 2021 and the 2027 analysis horizons. And there's additional mitigations that include the enhanced site design elements that we've gone over, and as we walk through this evening, and a transportation and management plan. The TDM plan is designed to encourage non-single occupancy vehicle trips. One of the most important features of reducing SOV trips is to right-size the on-site parking, which is, we previously discussed, is about 1 per 1,100 on the offices. The proximity of the site to transit, provision of the bike and pedestrian amenities, and the proposed parking ratios are all elements that will be very helpful in achieving the goals of the TDM plan. Other elements of the TDM plan are shown here. So just in summary, the location of HQ2 near multiple metro stations, a wealth of non-auto options, make this site uniquely suited to this type of land use. The project will complete the street grid for Metropolitan Park to complete connections through the site for peds, cyclists, vehicles, creating porosity for all modes. Site-specific transportation improvements include the shared curb street sections, at-grade long-term commuter bike parking lockers that exceed county requirements, improved bus stops, improved sidewalks and streetscape, bike lane improvements on Eads, loading facilities that exceed county requirements, and retail uses that will activate the street frontages. The 3 new signals and phasing and time adjustments at other signalized locations, the proposed vehicle parking ratios along the TDM plan to encourage non-SOV travel, and all of these design elements and transportation measures will collectively work to integrate Metropolitan Park 6, 7, and 8 into the surrounding fabric and accommodate transportation needs of the project. So with that, appreciate your time to listen to our presentation.
Thank you very much. Does staff also have a presentation on this?
My name is Joanne Gabor with DES. So staff doesn't have a presentation, but I am here to note any comments you have that we can use while we're continuing discussions with the applicant, or any questions I can try them and answer them at this time.
Great, thank you very much. Who wants to kick things off? Commissioner Lantelmi?
I have a question, Ms. Gabor, about that weird median on 15th Street at Eads. Is that, I think we want to get rid of that at some point. Could that be just part of this project?
Just to make sure I understand, you're talking about if I'm going eastbound on 15th Street, the left turn lane, I know there's a left turn, and then there's like an 8-foot median with a triangle shape. It actually is part of the discussion we're having with the applicant. We are looking at some changes to that intersection of 15th and Eads and figure out if there's a way that makes more sense to align the intersection. The one thing I will say though, with that median, it's not so weird when you think about it, just because the median on the east side of Ead Street, because you want to align where the turn lanes are, it's not. So it is something we're looking at, but it's not so out of the ordinary from a transportation planning perspective.
Because it's not quite a slip lane, but it's also not quite.
It's definitely, we'll go with weird. I'll use your term.
Also, I think the shared street, I love seeing that. Am I correct that DES will be going along with that and supporting it?
So it's something that, again, we are still looking at. Elm Street is something, I don't know if you were on, we did Park 6 originally. It was something, we did have the curbless environment. So East Elm Street, if you will, is something that we are very comfortable with. We are still having some discussions about what does 14th Street look like in terms of being the entrance to the buildings, and making sure that there's the ability for folks to get there, but also make sure from a pedestrian standpoint, we don't have too many conflicts, and making sure we mitigate those conflicts with appropriate pavers, different color pavers, or patterns, or planters. How do we make sure that we just provide that safety? So we're still looking at it, but I think 14th is something that we're just taking a little more time to look at to make sure it has the right feel.
I'd encourage you to use it as an experiment to see how it works. It seems to be working quite successfully at the Wharf. Water Street is a true shared street, and it's very, very safe for pedestrians. Cars, when they go there, they crawl along. I've been there a number of times under different circumstances, and it feels very, very safe for pedestrians. I would like us to try that. Now that we can have them in Arlington, I'd like to have it in an urban place like this to see how it works. My feeling is that it will work, but I'd very much like it to be in place so we can have it be a demonstration of that.
Yeah, it's something we're definitely looking at. I will say to your point, I think the thing to think about is also, if you look at in front of the Altair, which is also the 400 Army Navy project, there is something there that in my mind is a little more akin to what is at the Wharf today. It is that private drive, if you will, that goes along the building in the north-south direction. So I do think we are open to those ideas. As a county, we just want to make sure it's appropriate for the circumstances and development around it.
Yeah. The Altair just doesn't have the number of cars or people on it that it really makes much of a difference.
Correct.
The Wharf is just jammed with people almost all the time. And I think this will be very heavily used by pedestrians. And because of that, that's why I very much like to see it be the shared street and have the pedestrians be the priority on it. Because really, shared street makes it pedestrian priority. And that's why here, given the numbers of people that I believe will be on that way, I'd like to see that work. So anyway, that's just my personal comment.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Boucher.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for the idea, and Mr. Best for the implementation. For our August meeting, we had the opportunity to walk around this area, and that was just extremely useful. So thank you so much. It was the best commission meeting we've ever had, so thank you, despite the weather. I just have one question. In the tour, we did note that the existing park is used a lot. I think I just saw in your presentation, are you adding another green space in that? Yeah.
We're actually doing two things. We're expanding the park itself onto our site, as well as building two new plazas that will be adjacent to the park, but across the street from it. So actually, everything in this image here you see, the tall trees on the left, that brighter green tree with the kites above it, that's where the park stops today.
Yes.
Everything to the right is new open space.
That's great, because we all know that park was heavily used, so it's great. Thank you.
Commissioner Clement.
I just have a couple of questions. Are these buildings new, or are they part of the renovated? I know there are renovations going on down there. Are these the new buildings or the renovated buildings?
These are both new buildings.
Okay. And I have another question for the transportation engineer. You talked about right-sizing parking. Now, that's a very important concept, and could you elaborate on that in a sentence or two?
Yeah, I think we're all, parking is always something that's, is a bit of a, in the conversation these days. And trying to right-size it might actually be somewhat of an overused term. But I feel that what we're trying to do is figure out how do we provide the amount of parking that is appropriate for the number of people that will be here, that accommodates that mode, but doesn't incentivize that mode, but also provides enough parking so that you're protecting the community so that you're minimizing any sort of overspill into the community. So when we say right-sized, that's the needle we're trying to thread.
Okay.
Commissioner Gary.
Thank you. Mr. Barr, I had a question for you, actually. So one thing I noticed on one of the renderings, I think it was the 15th Elm rendering, the pedestrians in that rendering seem to be completely out of scale with 15th Street, right? 15th Street is going to be 60 to 75 feet across as crossings. Why does the county continue to preserve very wide streets like 15th, even as it continues to urbanize those areas and continues to place more pedestrians in those areas? And how does the county choose to continue prioritizing wider streets over its other priorities that's going to be setting for itself as we become a Vision Zero county?
So I guess the one thing I did want to point out is the cross-section for 15 that is proposed is essentially the same width as exists today. We are including parking, so I believe the overall travel distance actually is going to be reduced, or the width of the travel lanes, if you will. The overall section is very close to the existing section. Parking is being added to the north side. There's no parking today on the north side of 15th, between 15th and Elm, or Eads and Elm, excuse me. I think that, the challenge, to steal Dan's statement, the right-sizing the parking, it's balancing and right-sizing, if you will, the street grid and the travel lanes. When we look at trying to traverse the area in Crystal City and Pentagon City, 15th Street is one of the major corridors, if you will, to go in the east-west direction. And based on the analysis that we've done from a county perspective, and then also from what the applicant's done, the number of travel lanes is required based on the volume of traffic and volume of cars. We're not seeing, the one thing is we're not seeing a lot of increase in vehicles on the roads. But it's not decreasing to the point that we feel it's appropriate to reduce the number of travel lanes.
What is that volume of traffic?
I do not know. Maybe if you ask another question, we can find the answer by the time you answer whatever. Any other question I can answer for you?
I mean, I guess as a broader point, if it does feel like those priorities, I understand from a traffic engineer's perspective, it's very important to optimize the system and keep the system flowing, but from a pedestrian's perspective, that is a less than ideal outcome because it's a 5-lane street with multiple turn lanes. And just as a pedestrian who lives very near one of those, it is an incredibly unpleasant environment to walk on. It always feels dangerous. And as somebody who lives in an urbanized part of the county, it's really frustrating to feel that your part of the neighborhood has become a traffic sewer for people who are just driving through it.
And I think to almost to piggyback on your point, it is when we look at the broader perspective. I also think about 15th. If you look at 15th in the east-west direction, it's 5 travel lanes. So no one's going to hide behind that. There's no way around that. But then when we look at 14th and 13th, that we're providing, we are trying to provide those lower pedestrian, lower volume streets to try and balance, folks that, folks are going to need to go in that east-west direction. So to try and focus where the vehicles do travel on those areas is something that's just needs to be done. And I guess the one thing, I think about is, when I look at like East Street, for example, it used to be 2 lanes in each direction. Now we have the 1 lane in each direction in the middle turn lane than we did at the bike lane. So it's something that, from a county perspective, we're always looking to see, is there a way to reduce the number of travel lanes or reconfigure it to make it, better for everyone, be it cars, be it the buses, be it the bicyclists, be it the pedestrians. Like Army Drive, that complete street, we are removing travel lanes. So it's, I don't think it's something that, generally we just say, oh, well, this is what we have today, let's just keep it, or let's add as many travel lanes as we feel is necessary. It's something we just want to make sure we have that balance. And 15th Street is something that, based on the volumes that we do have, does require that number of vehicles and that number of travel lanes.
I guess I would broadly question the idea of whether or not good urban streets need balance in that sense, but I feel that's a conversation we'll be having over the next few months or next year.
I don't know. Did I talk for long enough that you found some time? Okay, so we do have 15,000 vehicles on 15th Street.
That doesn't feel like very much for 5 travel lanes. Yeah,
Those are the numbers we have. So
yeah. I'm good.
Commissioner Bryce? No.
I just want to thank the applicant for the presentation. And I just want to touch on something that Commissioner Clemens said in addressing when you address the right sizing of parking. I think that's something I would ask you to seriously go back and take a look at. And I'll caveat my statements by saying I think this is a spectacular project. From the design, from the open space, from all the multimodal aspects you're bringing to the table here, from biking to transit access. I think it's going to be a spectacular project. And I think a lot of people, when they come to talk to us, they know how to pull our strings, and they know we enjoy hearing that stuff, and they want to front load that presentation, but then you drop the, also that we're going to provide almost 2,000 parking spots. And so that sort of just kind of brings the mood down. Like really, if you're doing all that, I saw the mode split, and I think it's fantastic, but if there's a way we could really right-size that parking and get this right, where we are, in fact, making a difference in the community and not putting many single occupancy vehicles on the road, because I'm of the belief that if you build it, they will come. And if you're building 2,000 parking spots, or nearly 2,000 parking spots, you will fill them. Thank you.
Commissioner Wadsworth?
Yeah, I think I'm the one person here who actually lives here and knows the neighborhood very well. And I will say the 15th Street is very crowded in the morning, especially I walk from the one neighborhood that was not named on your slide deck over Highlands, which I'd encourage you to call that out. They're going to call it Pentagon City and Crystal City, which I think is a distinction without difference. We should get away from those terms going forward. There were hills neighborhood that I walk through there every morning in my commute to get to the metro station. That is a heavily traffic road. I think it would be helpful, because I think we're going to vote on this in the coming months. If the next time you guys come here, you explain how the bike lanes that you're building in fits with the county policy, so that we don't have to guess and try to backwards analyze it. Because we do have a new policy for improved bike facilities, and you guys can lay out exactly how this fits with the vision of the county policy. That'd be helpful. So, yeah, that's my comment. Thanks.
A couple questions for I think primarily the applicant. Does Amazon intend to charge employees for parking?
That is definitely something we can get back to. There are several people here we could pull that info from, but I don't have that ready.
That would be great, thank you. There was a brief mention of the 3 bus stops along the frontage of the project, and I believe something about enhancing them. Can you talk more about what the planned treatment is for the bus stops along the frontage?
So there are 3 bus stops along the frontage today. 2 of them are on East Street and one is on 15th Street. They currently are just a flag. There's no benches or facilities. What is being proposed is both stops on each street will have a shelter, and then a bench, probably the 5x12 shelter, and then a bench inside. The stop on Eads currently is just going to be improved to be a flag, but it will have the ADA accessible boarding path. We're also going to orient them so they're adjacent to the intersection on the far side, if you will, because right now they're in the middle of the block, and that's sometimes a little more problematic.
Any particular reason, is the 15th Street one see a lot less ridership right now, or why not a shelter at 15th Street?
I can get back to you. I know talking to our transit folks, they said that the flag was sufficient for their needs, so I believe them, but I can get back to you when we come back for action.
Just feel like just significant land use change happening. Maybe we should anticipate that would impact transit ridership.
I think, I do think part of it, though, is the number of lines, and the frequency does have an impact on it, because there are a number of lines on Eads, and they're less on 15th.
Yeah, great. They do take people to places that are not particularly metro accessible, though, like Shirlington and Huntington, I think, between the two sets. So always good to make it accessible from those areas as well. Does the applicant or staff want to talk about why the 15th Street bike lanes are proposed to stay as just bike lanes and not receive protection under the current proposal?
I guess I will maybe perhaps awkwardly ask the question, do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to talk about the SPRC on September 22 when we're going to talk about transportation?
Just figure the more we talk about it, the better. So let's talk about it now and at SPRC.
Okay. It'll probably be a very short conversation now. The reality is we are still working with the applicant on a number of iterations of what 15th and Eads, and then also to your point about the bike facility, we are still working out exactly what that's going to look like. So when we do come for action, we will have better definition of what that is defined as. My goal actually is to have that by the time we go to the SPRC, September 23. But we are working on it, and the reality is this is a pretty large site, so there are a lot of moving parts. And I don't know if we're going to fully be aligned by that time, but that is my goal. So 15th Street, it's unfortunate, and it's back to the question you asked originally, which is, we only have so much right away, and how do we provide all these uses? We do have, right now, it's going to be a 6-foot bike lane, and it is a 7-foot parking lane, and that's basically what we've been able to figure out at this point is going to fit along 15th Street. That's where we are today. We are also looking at having that bike lane, obviously, on the south side of the eastbound of 15th Street. So trying to balance that with that turn lane plus the 4 travel lanes and introducing the parking is becoming a bit of a balancing act.
Any other commissioner questions, comments, early comments or better later comments? All right, I just want to say I really hope that moving forward we can improve all of the bus stops along the frontage. Our transit riders deserve shelter from the elements. Ideally, and also in-station real-time information about when the bus is coming, although I understand that may be a step too far. I also really think that we should be protecting all of our bike lanes on frontages of new major development. I think 15th Street is, as we've mentioned, 15,000 cars is not an insignificant number. They're going pretty fast, especially the ones that just came off of Route 1. And if, as our new bike plan says, we're going to be making bike facilities for all ages and all abilities, you don't want my 6-year-old biking in that unprotected 6-foot bike lane next to those fast cars, all 15,000 of them. I also look forward to hearing more about the TTM package and whether Amazon intends to charge for parking. I think they should. And if they're not, they should definitely be offering a parking cash out equal to the market value of that parking that they're being provided at less than market rate, if that's the case. Anything else? Commissioner Clement?
Yes, I want to endorse your comment about 15th Street because I routinely bike up East Street to 18th to the Metro, and it just so happens there's a Starbucks a little further up the road. So I was thinking about biking up Pentagon City until I actually did the tour here, and I saw how dangerous 15th Street really is. So yes, I endorse that comment.
All right. I think we're done. Thank you very much. We'll be seeing you at SPRC. And I think the commission will take a brief 5-minute break while the next presentation gets pulled up. Thank you.
Okay.
Is this yours? This is Brian's.
I'll do it. I'm fine. I have a super short presentation. Basically, I'm hoping that mine is basically the sector plan, background issues,
Changes from our previous. And I just. And sitting down, what are we doing here?
Oh, okay, good. That means my vendor's doing his job. Oh, they shouldn't do that. They should be fixed. They were blowing around. I'm going to tell them about that.
All right, Mr. Best, let's get back to it.
Our next item is item number 6. This is 1900 Fort Myer Drive. This is the Holiday Inn site plan. This is a site plan action. There are 3 recommended actions associated with this. A is the vacation of a section of 20th Street North. B is the vacation of sections of public streets and utilities. And C is the actual site plan. I'll turn it over to the applicant for an overview.
Good evening, everyone. Nicholas Cummings with Walsh Colucci here on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to do the very brief introduction here before Walsh and Associates take over. Just for some background, the application, of course, concerns the Roslyn Holiday Inn property, which has been owned and operated by the applicant since 1972. The property is located at the intersection of Lee Highway with North Fort Myer Drive and North Nash Street near Gateway Park. We propose total redevelopment of the site consistent with the Roslyn sector plan, with a rezoning to the CO Roslyn zoning district. The proposed development is a 784,415 square foot mixed-use building with an FAR of 9.94 and a maximum height of 38 stories. It contains 375 hotel rooms under a 4-star hotel flag, 502 residential units, and approximately 11,000 square foot high-quality restaurant serving 3 meals a day, approximately 3,000 square feet of retail, and an approximately 37,000 square foot conference facility, which can accommodate up to 1,800 attendees at maximum capacity. Now, as I said in June, the conference facility is a significant and much-needed addition to Roslyn and fulfills an important economic development goal. This is the type of facility that is important to new companies looking to locate in Arlington. I know one of the topics tonight will be the appropriateness of the amount of parking provided for this use. This is an important issue to our team as well. And we have provided some additional information on that for you tonight, as well as other questions raised during the discussion in June. And so without further ado,
Good evening. I'm Mike Warkowski. I'm with Wells & Associates, and I'm here to present the update to the 1900 North Fort Myer Drive project. We had some minor changes in development density, so we prepared an updated traffic report that was completed in August, beginning of August. So we have a comparison of that. We also wanted to go over some of the discussion items that we heard at the SPRC previous TC meeting, and then provide some additional information that was requested of us related to comparable projects and those sorts of things. So the first slide, this compares the original application to the updated application, just to have a sense as to what the differences are and the density changes that have occurred. So increase in hotel rooms, residential slight increase, restaurant slight increase, retail slight decrease, conference space roughly the same, a little bit less than what we had. And then the parking went from 858 to 818, which is a 40 space reduction. The 818 was what was presented at the last TC meeting, so that has not changed. This is from the original application. Next is the overview of the proposed circulation plan. So just to orient everybody, Lee Highway is to the north on this plan. The access primarily both on Nash Street, North Fort Myer Drive, vehicular driveways on Nash Street for the parking garage entrance to the north, primarily for the residents that will be living here. Loading dock to the south, adjacent to Turnberry. On North Fort Myer Drive, there are 2 access points. One is the portico share entry for the hotel, conference center, and then a two-way driveway for the hotel parking garage. There are also access points for pedestrians, so the main conference hotel access point along North Fort Myers Drive, also entrance into the hotel lobby going to the north, and then an entrance to the restaurant that's adjacent to the plaza. You can also see in the highlighted yellow the public pedestrian connection that runs between Nash Street and North Fort Myers Drive. That was part of the sector plan recommendations. Along Nash Street, primarily main access points to the north. There are access points into the retail spaces, and then along Nash Street itself, the access point that is to the residential lobby. There's also bicycle racks, as you can see, some locations that surround the site, some of those along Nash Street as well as North Fort Myers Drive. There are also some drop-off pickup short-term parking spaces that are on Nash Street, and those are sort of in the drop-off pickup zone intended for the residential building. So this slide shows a comparison of our site trip generation. So this compares the existing development with the program that we analyzed in our March 2019 traffic and parking study, and then the updated program that was shown previously, analyzed in the August update. So you can see that the difference between those two is 16 a.m. trips and 19 p.m. trips. So although the net difference is pretty minor here in terms of the traffic generation, we updated the report so that it would reflect the most current densities, and then we added in some of the parking information. This slide shows the overall signalized intersection levels of service. So as was presented at the info session, the overall levels of service here are consistent. They haven't changed from the previous report because of the modest difference in peak hour trips that hasn't increased much. What you see in blue is the future conditions without the redevelopment, and then in orange, future conditions with the redevelopment. Primarily, all the intersections would continue to operate acceptable levels of service, with the exception of Lee Highway eastbound and North Fort Myers Drive. It would go from a level of service E to a level of service F during the morning. The increase in delay is about 6.2 seconds, which is pretty close to what we had presented last time. So really the only changes are there along North Fort Myers, westbound Lee Highway, and then down 19th Street, where the overall, even though there's a change in level of service, it's basically 1 second increase of delay. So again, results are consistent with the previously prepared study. So we had some discussion items that we wanted to go over that we had heard at SPRC's TC info meeting and other meetings that we've had. We wanted to cover the loading, how loading dock would work, the North Nash Street configuration, and then some of the parking analysis that we've updated. So as it relates to the loading dock, just to refresh everyone's memory, the loading dock will be fully enclosed, so all trucks, vehicles can enter, will be enclosed, trash trucks as well, and then all of the activities will be in an enclosed space. The loading dock primarily would be accessed, along Nash Street adjacent to Turnberry's loading dock. So we looked at two of the how the uses would work and what they would generate in terms of trucks. Hotel, restaurant, loading dock, generally expected to have about 10 deliveries per day. That includes the daily trash truck pickups. Most of these would be box trucks or sort of the larger vans, 25 to 40 feet in length. Most deliveries are in the morning for food service, beverage services, but there are some deliveries in the afternoons and evenings. One of the things we discussed at the previous meeting was number of large tractor trailers. So what we're anticipating is 1 or 2 per week that would come to the site. I think, and I may have said this, maybe it's 1 or 2 per day, but after we looked at it and talking with our team, we think it's really one or two per week, and this is the large sort of W50 kinds of tractor trailers. Again, all enclosed. We will have a dock master that will be scheduling all the deliveries throughout the day for all the commercial uses and the residents as well. So on the residential side, about 10 deliveries per day. So residential a little bit different because those are more of UPS, Federal Express, Amazon pulling up 3 times a day to deliver their packages. So those can be managed within the loading dock, but we do have some short-term parking spaces on Nash Street as well. Most of the move-ins and move-outs, those are generally on the weekends, generally by smaller trucks, and they'll all be scheduled so that they get best usage out of the dock. So just wanted to clarify that's how we expect the loading dock to be used. I think we do have other backup slides if you're interested in movements, but we went over that last time, but we have it if there are questions. So moving to the North Nash Street configuration, we were asked to take a look at the conditions with and without a separate right turn lane going northbound on Nash Street. What you see on the sort of the top part is the shared through right movement. That was what was analyzed in our traffic report. Although you can see by the slide here that this is the existing condition. There is a fairly large curb return radius there, so a right-turning vehicle can kind of slip around, but if there are 1 or 2 cars in the queue, they basically can't get to it. But that's how we analyzed it in our traffic report. What you see below that is a separate through lane and a separate right turn lane. So on the left-hand side, we've reported both the overall delay at the intersection and the approach delay. The overall delay with the single lane is 51.3 seconds. This is the average delay for the intersection over the peak hour. The overall with 2 lanes, it's only a 1 second drop, basically 50 seconds. The approach delay is where there is some reduction, as you'd expect, because we're adding a turn lane there. So that approach delay would be reduced by about 11 seconds under this condition. We also noted some of the features at the intersection that we might consider for modifications. There was a lot of discussion about pedestrian crossing, safety, and all those things. And I've observed this intersection many times. There are a number of movements out there, scooters, bicycles, what have you. So it's obviously a key location. We're looking for how could we improve safety for all those users, not just capacity-wise. So a few things we thought about would be if it were signed to don't block the box, because that's part of the problem out here, frankly, is pedestrians and scooters sort of crossing in between vehicles that have blocked the box and are within the crosswalks. So I've seen a few near misses out there and those kinds of things. Also, that would have to have some improved enforcement, to really get people to adhere to it. There can be some striping also of the full intersection, which sometimes you see, it's in the district in some locations where the intersection's striped out. I don't know how much that would really help here, but it does alert a driver that they should be sitting out there. We do recognize that, again, what really causes this is really that part of the AM peak hour when that eastbound queue really hits the intersection and begins to block it up. There is a lead pedestrian signal phase there, so the pedestrian phase turns on, it allows pedestrians to get into the crosswalk before the green phases and the other cycles begin. So that is helpful, and I've seen it in operation. It does allow people to get out there and for drivers to see them. But we think there are some potential improvements that could be made. There are trade-offs with and without the right turn lane as it relates to pedestrian crossing distances and those sorts of things. So those are other considerations. So next is parking. What this shows is sort of the static calculation of parking based on what our proposed parking ratios are. So starting with residential, there's a total of 352 spaces that would be provided for 502 units. That's broken up into 0.63 spaces per unit for tenants, and then an additional 35 spaces for visitors, or 0.07. The hotel at 0.5 spaces per room is 188. Retail restaurant, using the code calculation, is 18 spaces. And then essentially the balance of the 818 spaces is for the conference center of 37,417. As I mentioned, this is a static calculation, and sort of what I think we went through in a lot of detail at the info meeting was that the dynamics of the project and how the conference space is used really doesn't lend itself to kind of a static calculation like this, because we want to make the best use of the parking, which we know will be managed, and we'll have valet parking options as well as self-parking, but when there are events that will occur, there will be managed parking to get best use of the facilities. And in order to do that, we looked at essentially 4 conditions for under a shared parking scenario, and these are the results of those shared parking conditions. They're consistent with what we presented previously, but they have been updated because, the densities are a little bit different, the square footage of the restaurant has gone up, and those sorts of things. But they're generally in line with where we were, which shows a deficit under the 4 conditions we looked at. One was an AM event, so an event that starts at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, running till 11 or so. A weekday midday event, this is sort of your 9 to 5 conference. When you arrive in the morning, you stay all day, and then you leave at the end of the day. A weekend evening event, so this is sort of your peak Friday evening. You have a large event, you have the restaurant and other uses that are all reaching their peak at the same time. And then a weekend evening event like a wedding reception. And you can see the differences here. The analysis, I think, as we presented last time, sort of accounts for the dynamics of how many people may be in the hotel that attend the event. What's the non-auto mode share for different users for different types of events? Which is why we came up with these 4 conditions. And by showing a deficit here, what we're really relying on is ultimately that we do get a higher non-auto mode share, or we need to rely on more off-site parking. If you look at sort of a sensitivity analysis of these totals, what it would tell you is that the non-auto mode share or some other mode would need to go up by anywhere from 50 to 25 or 30%. So if we were designing for sort of these peak conditions, then we would need more parking. I think what we're designing for these conditions, but we're relying on the majority of the time we will get those non-auto mode shares. So there will be a big portion of the year where we will be able to handle those events with the parking that's provided. But when we do have these peak events, which will occur throughout the year, we will need to either rely on off-site parking or an increase in non-auto mode share as much as we can in order to accommodate those events. So we were asked to provide some comparable locations for both the residential and the hotel conference center. And so we, first looking at the residential, our team gathered up, as many as we could sort of get our hands on. And we got 25 of them here. We're showing all various locations. We looked at a number of units, parking supply. We did get utilization from some of the management companies that run these buildings, and then distance to metro, walk score, bike score, transit score. We've also noted the ones that were the same distance as our project, which is 0.15 miles or about 800 feet from the metro. So we looked at all the properties together. The average site plan approved parking ratio, because we couldn't get utilization of all of them. The site plan approved ratio is 1.12 per unit versus the 6.63 that we're proposing for the tenants of the building. The overall for the site plan approved for units that are within proximity to metro was 1.1 per unit. the walk score, transit and bike score, those are slightly higher than, what we currently get at the site, but we would think those would increase as the sector plan and transit availability and bike lanes and those things come online. So I think they'll be comparable. Then we further broke it down to properties that provide utilization, so how their parking was actually being utilized. And there were 10 of those properties, the majority of which are within 0.5 or 0.15 of Metro Rail Station. Under this condition, the approved parking ratio is 1.11 to 1.16 spaces per unit versus our 0.63. The overall average for utilization for all the properties and the 6 within 0.15 of Metro was about 1.01 per unit. So that's the actual utilization of the spaces. Again, on the residential side, we're well below that average that's reported within the comparables that we could find and be able to make that comparison. So moving on to the hotel conference space, I would start off by saying that this is really difficult to get. The hotel conference, buildings are in really unique locations. Some have some parking, some don't have any, some have, various kinds of spaces. It was a challenge getting as many as we could. We tried to compile what we could, make phone calls, collect as much information as we could on how much parking that they actually provided and sort of what their services were, restaurants, those kinds of things. We ended up with 21 total. The majority of which are in this region. There are a few outliers there that we could get information for, so we added them. What we really looked at was the number of rooms, amount of conference space that they had, on-site parking that was provided, the availability of transit, and then proximity to an airport, because I think that makes part of a factor in some of these decisions. So those are all listed here. So when we compared all the properties, so all 21 properties together, we looked at really two factors. One is the parking ratio of spaces per room, and then the ratio of spaces per 1,000 square feet of conference center space, to look at those two metrics to see how they compare to each other. And when we looked at all the properties together, the spaces per room was 0.98 spaces per room, essentially one. Our proposed is 1.24 spaces per room. The conference space, though, that we have is a lot higher than the buildings that we have in our comparables here. And the ratio of 24.12 is a lot higher than what we're proposing. So then we broke that down further, and we looked at hotels with over 50 square feet per room for conference space. We're well above that number, but the Urban Land Institute sort of defines a conference center hotel as a hotel with greater than 50 square feet per room of conference space. So we use that as a metric to further kind of refine the data. And we had 11 of those. What that showed us was that the spaces per room rate went to 1.08 spaces per room, and then 16.78 spaces per 1,000 square feet of conference space. Again, comparing those to our proposal, that's about 13% higher compared to our 1.24 spaces per room, but the convention space rate is much higher when you compare the 16.78 to the 12.45 that's in our rate. And of the hotels, they have about 2/3 of the meeting space when you compare that average to our hotel. So it's around 65 square feet per room average, all of them, versus about 100 for us. And we did one more refinement of the information, and we took the hotels that were greater than 50 square feet per room, less than a half mile from transit, and then greater than 2 miles from an airport to see how those would compare. We thought those were in the range of, the way our site would operate. So we ended up only with 5 of them, but we took the information as best we could. Under that condition, the room rate was 1.11 spaces per room, again, versus 1.24 for our project. The rate that's a lot higher again here is the conference center rate for the amount of parking provided is 16.85 versus the 12.45 that we are proposing. So when we looked at the information in aggregate, it suggests that we're in the range of other conference center kinds of projects whenever you consider the amount of conference space that we have, which is almost double a lot of the sites that we looked at, and then relating to transit accessibility and proximity to the airport. I would also mention there were a few locations that staff asked us to take a look at. We looked at those locations, we tried to gather some information to make comparisons, but we really just couldn't get anything that we were able to make a direct comparison. There are so many of these projects that are unique, that some provide on-site parking, as we see here, but they also have public parking nearby, those kinds of things. It's all those dynamics, but we had the information and we wanted to make sure that we shared it because we understood it was important to the commission and it's important to our analysis as well. I'm going to turn it over to Karen, who will talk about the site frontage improvements and such, and then be available for questions. So thank you very much.
Hi, Karen White, Walter Phillips. I'm going to use these images here to talk about what we're improving around the site. So here you can see we're at the corner of Fort Myer and Lee Highway. So I'm going to start on Lee Highway. So some improvements we are doing here is that we are adding a 6-foot bike lane along Lee Highway. So there'll be 3 travel lanes and then a 6-foot bike lane. There'll be a 6-foot wide landscape strip that you can see there, and then there's the 10-foot wide, 10-foot clear public sidewalk. As you can see, as we go around the corner, we are removing that right turn slip lane from that intersection and tightening that up a little bit. As we move on to Fort Myer, you'll see that we have a 4.5-foot landscape strip. We have the 8-foot cycle track, then we have a 3-foot landscape buffer, and then we have a sidewalk, 10 feet clear, ranges 10 to 12 feet in places, but 10-foot minimum clear. Then if we want to go to the other side, there we go. So now we're at the other corner of Lee Highway and Nash Street. So one thing we did do with this intersection is we are changing the radiuses at this intersection, so we are reducing the pedestrian crossing of Nash by about 25 feet. Reducing the pedestrian crossing width. We are keeping the existing street section on Nash, which is a travel lane in each direction and a parking lane on each side of the street. We are not proposing to lose any parking on Nash Street with our development. We are able to keep the 8 spaces on our side of the development, and there are 8 spaces adjacent from our site on the other side that are remaining. It might not be 8, but we're not decreasing any. From a sidewalk perspective, we are going to have tree pits, 5 foot by 12 foot, and then a 9-foot clear sidewalk will be our streetscape up to the building here on Nash. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
In addition to the applicant's presentation, we have 5 public speakers.
Great, let's go. But do we have a staff presentation prior to that? Okay, great.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Allen with the Department of Environmental Services, and this is the, as you know, the 1900 Fort Myer Drive holiday insight. It is for action. You saw this on June 27th as an information item. There are 3 action items before you this evening. The applicant is giving you a fairly good update of the information that you've previously seen. The site, as you know it, bordered by Fort Myers Drive, Lee Highway, Nash Street, and Turnberry Tower to the south. The existing site has approximately 60,000 square feet. It's currently developed with a 12-story hotel, 307 guest rooms, 15,439 square feet of meeting space, and 411 parking spaces. The existing 20th Street is 13,056 square feet, and that's the northern boundary of the site. There is something called Parcel Q, which is a remnant from the I-66 project, and that is 5,700 square feet. Both of those parcels will be consolidated into the site for a total of 78,918 square feet. The actions and the description of the project is to rezone the site from CO mixed use and S3A special to CO Roslyn mixed use Roslyn district. To amend the site plan 79, to redevelop the site with 502 residential units and a 25-story tower, 375 hotel rooms and a 38-story tower, which includes 37,417 square feet of conference space and 14,412 square feet of retail primarily, a restaurant, 818 total parking spaces for all the uses above, and modifications and exclusions which are described in detail in the full report. There are, in a separate report and an additional action, street and utilities vacations. Excuse me, Linda Collier would like to describe those because they are incorrectly identified here.
Due to my fault, not his. The agenda is correct, and my report is correct for the county manager's recommendations, but when it talks about the Transportation Commission recommendations, the first recommendation should be what is number 2 on the county manager recommendation, the vacation of a portion of 20th Street North. And that mistake carried through to when I gave Dennis the information, so it is not his fault, it is my fault, and I apologize.
Speaking about the sector plan, in the basically overall illustrative plan, the items in this project which reference or are incorporated in the sector plan are the consolidation and the redevelopment of all the parcels on the site, which include 20th Street and Parcel Q, the removal of the slip lane at Lee Highway and Fort Myers Drive, framing Lee Highway frontage with building mass across from Gateway Park, the building to the sidewalk on Nash Street and Fort Myers Drive, removal of the sky bridge across Fort Myers Drive, orientation of the building towers in a north to south direction, and building of a bicycle facility on Fort Myers Drive. Additionally, the sector plan identifies a location for a pedestrian passageway. There is such a passageway in the building which connects through from Nash Street to Fort Myers Drive. With respect to off-street parking, I will read to you what the sector plan describes. It says to incorporate shared parking as part of all new and amended site plans where feasible, to discourage above-grade parking, but where permitted, to apply standards for wrapping such above-grade parking with building space accommodating active uses, and to encourage the use of high-capacity vehicle storage technologies. As the applicant has described to you, and perhaps not fully, this project does have 3 levels of below-grade and 4 levels of above-grade parking, with the 818 spaces, which they have described. There are also 79 tandem spaces. The residential parking ratio is 0.7. They have said it's 0.63 plus their visitor parking, so it really nets out to 0.7. The hotel parking is 1.2 spaces per unit, which includes the parking for the conference center. I think this is an item for discussion. The applicant has presented a significant amount of information, justification for the amount of parking, the use that they are proposing, and the reasons why these specific recommendations in the sector plan are being reasons why the sector plan can be superseded in this case. And I think that's an adequate rationale for discussion. There are elements of the project that are generally in support of MTP policies, such as the bicycle facilities. The Corps of Roslyn study recommends certain bicycle facilities, such as the cycle track along Fort Myer Drive, the provision of other on-street bicycle facilities, the provision of appropriate support facilities, such as interior parking, visitor parking, bicycle lockers, the provision of pedestrian facilities such as widened sidewalks, the removal of the sky bridge, the removal of the slip lane along Fort Myer Drive, and then the reduction of pedestrian crossing distances and the curb radii at Nash Street and Lee Highway as was described in the applicant's presentation. There are issues regarding transportation that were identified in the site plan review process. The applicant has gone over some of those. I can further describe some of those as well. We discussed issues with respect to the traffic impact studies and the future traffic growth in Roslyn. During the process, we were told by several citizens that they were concerned about the traffic data for several expected projects, several upcoming anticipated projects in Roslyn, especially those that might affect Nash Street, and that our project was not anticipating those. It's our policy that only approved entitled projects during the scoping process are incorporated into the MMTA or the TIA. So in that case, the proposed project for the Marriott redevelopment, the proposed project for the Ames site were not incorporated into the traffic analysis that was done for this project. And that is the subject of some concern by the neighbors. However, I think it's important to remember that there is ongoing study, and it has been for several years, which is the Corps of Roslyn study that's been going on since 2017, that does take into account projections of population, household, and traffic growth, as well as projections for development in Roslyn. It's based upon forecasting data developed in concert with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. The forecasts for traffic can be quite localized, and for Roslyn, they begin at the traffic analysis zone level, which is a level that is several blocks in dimension, and that has been broken down into a much more refined level. So those projections, which are 30 or 20 or 10 years, incorporate what we perceive to be the future development, and it is based upon projections for development, as I said, its households, its traffic, and its population. We believe that it is quite accurate. It does take into account all developments that are, including the developments that the neighbors have identified. So we are fairly confident in our projections for future traffic. If it is not specific to this block, it is quite specific to a few blocks surrounding the site. We have also heard issues with respect to loading and deliveries, and I will not repeat what the applicant has said. However, I will say that we will include a site plan condition with respect to loading that will that would require them to make an effort to schedule deliveries from these larger trucks, which, as they said, would be about 1 or 2 per week for those to occur during the off-peak hours. And we would remind you that most of these deliveries will be for trucks that are shorter than 40 feet in length, and that those can be front-loaded into the loading dock, and all of the movements will take place interior to the loading dock. Another issue that we heard was about the intersection of Nash Street and Lee Highway. Again, I think the applicant did a fairly good job of describing the reasons why, and it is particularly for pedestrian safety. The one thing that I would add to their presentation is that, based upon our analysis, they gave the delay in the number of seconds, and with us, we believe that we gave this in car lengths, and we believe that there will be an increase of no more than 2 car lengths as a result of this proposal. 2 car lengths of delay. And then just basically from the county's point of view, elaborating a little bit on the pedestrian safety aspects. It is both for pedestrian safety and for improving access to Gateway Park, shortening that crossing distance across the highway by about 9 or 10 feet. Incorporating the leading pedestrian interval is going to make that access to Gateway Park safer, faster. We've also heard concern about impacts during construction. We do have standard conditions, which of course the applicant is agreeing to. There will be significant utility relocation, particularly during the beginning of the construction period. There are several standard conditions with respect to, and I did go through this during the site plan review meetings about erosion and sediment control, maintenance of traffic, on-site construction activity hours, maintenance of street surfaces, temporary lighting plan, off-street parking for construction workers, community outreach during construction, construction site maintenance requirements, storage of materials. We have had experience in Arlington of coordinating multiple construction projects in a small vicinity, and the management of those impacts on abutting communities. It's worth noting that there have been several recent instances of construction activity occurring in a tight vicinity, and that includes Ballston, where some of those activities have been coordinated and managed by the county in a successful manner. We've also had a concern about bus parking and drop-off. Currently, the Holiday Inn does receive a number of larger 40-foot buses with passengers whose clients may be staying at their hotel. If that is the case, those buses may be able to load and unload during off-peak periods. However, we do not have designated tour bus pickup and drop-off areas for the proposed new hotel. We need to be pretty clear about that. With respect to parking, we are looking at sites for overnight parking or for dwelling. Those would be on the periphery of Roslyn. That might be Arlington Ridge Road, it might be Kent Street, it might be 17th Street. That's all I have with respect to that. On public engagement, as you know, some of you were participants in the SPRC process. We did have 4 meetings from April through July. Additionally, the Corps of Roslyn study, which was really concluding at around the same time that this project was ongoing. Some of you also participated in that, and they had 2 or 3 public meetings on their draft alternatives during the spring, and they wrapped up in late June with their final recommended alternative. We have received multiple letters. I should say the county manager's office and the county board office have received them, and those include from the Arlington Chamber, from the Parks and Rec Commission, from the Public Art Committee, from the Dakota Condominium Board, and from the Georgetown Vista Condominium Association. Those are the letters that have been received to date on this project. I will turn this over to Linda for the street and utilities vacations before I get to the manager's recommendation.
So the first slide depicts what is number 2 on the Planning Transportation Commission recommendation, and it's the vacation of 2 portions of the street and utilities easements, which are 311 square feet and 672 square feet. And it's the small area that's parallel to North Fort Myers Drive at the bottom. And then the next slide depicts what is number 2 under the county manager's recommendations, which is the vacation of the portion of 20th Street North. And that is 13,056 square feet. And so we would request at this point that the Transportation Commission find that these requests for vacations are in conformance with the adopted comprehensive plan or applicable portion thereof.
So, the county manager's recommendation on this project is to, adopt the ordinance to rezone the subject site from CO and S3A to CO Roslyn, to adopt the ordinance to approve the subject major site plan amendment for hotel residential retail of 782,000 square feet of gross floor area with the modifications, density exclusions, parking ratio, compact parking percentage, residential use standards, and other modifications to approve the project subject to the conditions in the report. And then the 2 findings on the vacations that Linda has just identified, and which are different from the text here.
The last one is the same. The next to the last one, the first one should be fine, that the vacation of the portion of the right-of-way for 20th Street North running east from North Nash Street to North Fort Myers Drive, the northern boundary of lots 1, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. Block 15, Roslyn Farms, RPC 16022003 and 16022004 with conditions are consistent in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or applicable portion thereof.
This concludes the staff presentation.
All right, Mr. Best, let's get to our speakers.
We have 5 speakers, starting with Susan Vincent.
Good evening. I'm Susan Vincent from the Dakota Condominium Association. The Dakota is directly across North Nash Street from the existing Holiday Inn, and it will be directly across from the proposed apartment building. It's fair to say that those of us who live on North Nash Street have considerable concerns regarding the Holiday Inn project, especially as it relates to transportation issues. I'm not going to try to cover all of our concerns because some of my neighbors are also going to be speaking, and we will be voicing common concerns tonight. I'd like to start with the subject that the gentleman from Environmental Services brought up about considering this project, this DITMAR project, not in a vacuum, but along with the other projects that have been announced, the Marriott project, the 1401 Wilson, the Art Institute project. These are all within one block of North Nash Street, and they will have a significant impact. And I understand there are rules and regulations, but we truly feel that these should be considered together, not one at a time. Also, I would like to request that DITMAR be asked to design some sort of a porte cochere or lay-by lane for their apartment building in order to accommodate drop-offs and pickups and deliveries so that traffic on North Nash Street won't be impeded. It's just a two-lane road. And so if you've got Ubers and delivery trucks in a lane in front of the apartment building, that's going to stop traffic. Also, buses were mentioned, and DITMAR really needs to figure out a way to deal with buses, which are inevitable and apparently cannot fit in the hotel's porte cochere as designed. Buses need some place to park while they're waiting to pick up passengers, and we would like to request that buses be prohibited on North Nash Street, which will be a completely residential street once this apartment building is built. So we don't feel it's appropriate for buses to park on North Nash Street while they're waiting. Also, during the construction, we would ask that construction vehicles be prohibited from North Nash Street, again, which is a completely residential street, and that construction vehicles not be allowed on North Nash Street until 7 o'clock in the morning. So they should be staged somewhere else while they're waiting for their 7 o'clock start on North Nash Street. And I'll leave other comments to other neighbors.
And our next speaker is Sylvia Kendra.
Good evening, Sylvia Kendra. I'm representing the North Roslyn Civic Association. And I would like to speak on the vacation of 20th Street and Parcel Q because as small as they are a very big benefit to our community and to the residents. The 20th Street holds 14, I think, or 16 spaces, and they're used around the clock. They're public spaces, and there's a meter there, people pay, and they're used constantly. We're also losing parking on Nash Street, where they're building new entryways into their building. And that's going to be a huge impact to our community, not because our community uses them, but service providers, nurses, just all sorts of folks that visit the residential community there. They won't have a place to park. Additionally, that parking area is used a lot now more recently by by like car-to-goes and those types of car share situations. Anytime you drive through that neighborhood, you will see car-to-goes parked there because they're constantly in use. And we're going to lose that as well. So that's 20th Street. And, you know, Parcel Q as well. I don't know if you guys are speaking about Parcel Q, but if you are, that's just a casual open space that's used constantly by the community. The people walk their dogs. When there's too much traffic on Lee Highway, they use Parcel Q to walk their dogs or to just cut through over to Gateway Park. And there's going to be nowhere for them to have an open space without crossing Lee Highway and crossing into the other area. So those things are really big impacts to a very dense residential community. I would love to see, we asked about it at the last meeting, would love to see some of the abundant parking, private parking that they're building, that part of it be made for the community, that be made not free, but it still be paid, parking at Arlington County rates, because what we're expecting is that currently the parking space that is used, it's Arlington County rates, but that's going to increase considerably, and that's going to affect a lot of different people. I think a lot of the parking right now is used by their own employees. I'm not sure where they're going to park either. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Terry Harrell.
Hi, I'm Terry Perrell, and I'd love to use all the minutes they didn't use. But I won't do that to you. I'm here this evening representing the Georgetown Vista, which will, in this bill, will no longer be a name that's applicable to where they live, because there will be no Georgetown Vista. They have a lot of issues, but you should have received a letter from them today, so you have most of the points in there in front of you. But as has been mentioned, this is a street which has 5 residential large units already on it, and this will be the 6th. And for all but one of those, this is the only street you can exit your garage on. So if I want to get out of my garage, I must go on to Nash, which is a small 1-block-long residential street. And at one end is that lovely intersection where the gas station church is. And in the morning, that street, which is Key Boulevard, is backed up, and you cannot possibly make a left turn on that street. And because there is no turn lane, you cannot then make a right turn. We are asking for at the other end of the street, which currently there is, as VDOT has, it has 2 lanes and a turn lane. We have 2 lanes and sort of a slip lane, turn lane. That lane is essential for us to get out. I have sat through 4 lights through an intersect waiting for my ability to cross over Lee Highway. If I had not had room next to me for cars to get by, no one would have gotten off my street on either end. That lane is essential to our mental health, if nothing else. We try not to use cars. We are all good users of all the bus services and the metros. But my doctor's office is 3 bus rides, a 1-mile walk, and a metro ride away. That's not going to happen. And I'm not carrying my Costco groceries on my bicycle. You know, you do use your cars, as you showed this evening and previously, that still the largest percentage of people are still commuting. And Roslyn has a very large percentage of population are millennials and young people, but there's a very large group of senior citizens who have moved there for the convenience of public transportation. But we still need to be able to use our cars. So that's a very big issue for us. The other is we are really concerned about the use of the large vehicles, and the ARSA, they are going to management. You manage those and not have them come at peak hours. Does that mean they're going to go at 3 a.m. and back up on my street? I want those hours to be restricted also, that they will not be using middle of the night to bring in big trucks that make a lot of noise, and they have that lovely beep, 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 beep sound when they back up on my street when I'm trying to sleep. So we're worried about noise control during the construction and noise control after construction. And it was mentioned previously, those 20 spaces on streets on 20th Street, there's 14 spaces. They have said there's no parking spaces being lost on our street. That's not true. They have put a couple of spaces for lift and drop spaces we will not be able to park. I'm a pretty good cook, but my dinner is not worth $20 parking at the Holiday Inn site to come to my house for dinner. I mean, because parking there is until 8 o'clock at night. So if I have the Comcast guy comes or the plumber guy comes, they need a place to park. And so this is, as Sylvia was saying, if they had part of their parking, which would also, their retail people will probably get validations, but if they had part of that parking so that people could use it at public rates like we do in other garages around town, it would make life much more bearable for most of us who live on that street. There is no visitor parking in my building. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? I guess I'm not going to use all this time. I think noise control, we want to make sure the site plan will be a sole corridor. I mean, it's going to be the corridor for the Marriott project is going to have condos, it's going to have apartments. The 1401 is going to have a grocery store. what is the one street between them? Nash Street, and it is 1 block long. I used all my time. Thank you all very much.
To be clear, you do have 30 seconds left. That first beep is just your warning that your time is running.
Thank you very much.
And our next speaker is Thomas Cook.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Thomas Cook. I'm a resident at the Turnberry Towers on Nash Street. I won't take the full 3 minutes, I hope. I want to say that in very lengthy and detailed conversations that we've had with neighbors and members of Turnberry itself, some of the issues, which the developer is well aware of, have been very common. And I do think the impact to what Nash Street is today, what Nash Street will be tomorrow, does merit further consideration. I do agree with one of the neighbors who just told you that to consider this project in isolation without taking into account Marriott, I think it's a colossal mistake. We've attended the presentation by Marriott. Marriott's vision is that Nash Street goes all the way through, that the Marriott Hotel actually turns itself around, and Nash goes boom. You just can't say it's the Holiday Inn impact only. We have to also look at everything in that area. I want to talk about the loading dock issue, which has been of great concern in the area. For better or worse, where people will be living literally on top of the loading dock. That's inevitable. It's there now. It certainly is not today, but it's going to be tomorrow. Today it's a hotel. Tomorrow it's hotel. It's residential. It's retail. It's convention center. The traffic will be enormous. And as I understand the structure, these trucks are going to have to turn around on the street. These trucks cannot just drive in and then drive out. They have to turn around to enter the property. That's going to tie Nash Street up like there's no tomorrow. And I do agree that we are going to lose some of the parking spots because of an inevitable need for space for the trucks to be making their turns. There's been issues raised concerning noise, the environment. Those are inevitable, I think, with this type of a project. There may be very little we can do with that. But I do think that a further conversation regarding the impact on Nash Street, okay, today and tomorrow in the future is worthy of your extra time. If that means we delay, we continue this conversation, I think that would be very valuable time well spent. And I thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
And our final speaker for this item is Harold Steinberg.
Good evening. My name is Harold Steinberg. I am a board member at Turnberry Tower. We applaud the desire to diversify the transportation modes within Roslyn and make it more pedestrian-friendly. We recognize that one way to do that is to limit the number of parking spaces within the buildings in Roslyn. But unfortunately, those are not the only cars that go through Roslyn. Roslyn traffic is actually caused mainly by cars going through Roslyn, heading to someplace else. So it makes sense that if we want to improve the traffic in Roslyn, we try to move it as quickly as possible through Roslyn. The things that I'm going to talk about are designed to do exactly that. And they were mentioned by several of the previous speakers. Since so many speakers mentioned them, it might make a little bit of sense. First is that the loading dock should be configured so that the trucks do not have to back in. Because once they have to back in, it's going to stop the traffic on Nash Street, moving through Nash Street, particularly during the busiest hours. Number two, I heard that the number of 18-wheelers is going to be limited to 1 or 2 a week. Well, to me, that's the starting point. That's a rejection. And if Nash Street is a residential street, which it is, then there should be no 18-wheelers on the street. There should be only box trucks. And they should be limited to the normal working hours of 8 to 5, not early in the morning, not late at night. We heard that there's going to be 3 parking spaces made available short-term so that people being dropped off and picked up at the residence, the cars would not have to stop on Nash Street to pick them up. I suggest that if there's just 3 parking spaces, for short-term parking, that's what they'll end up being. Cars will park there rather than pick up and drop off people. And once they don't have that space, they're going to pick up and drop off the folks along Nash Street. Again, stopping the traffic on Nash Street. We think there should be a lay-by within that building similar to the one Turnberry has, so the cars come completely off the street. Talking about laybys, the porte cochere for the hotel, our understanding is that buses, big buses, cannot get in there, which means the bus is picking up people, and despite whatever class hotel it is, they're going to be big buses. They're going to have to stop on Fort Myers. Again, stopping traffic, preventing it from moving through. And finally, I'd say that the Turnberry folks, not Turnberry, folks did put up a, can I take their 30 seconds? I'm done? Okay, I was just going to say that they showed that box on Nash and Lee Highway, and Dennis did talk about the fact that you guys were not considering the impact of the Marriott, but if they're going to empty out onto Nash Street too, it seems to me that you got to have a comprehensive traffic plan.
Thank you.
And that concludes our speakers for this item.
Thank you very much to everyone who came and spoke. Commissioners, let's start off with questions, and then we can move into comments and eventually towards a motion. Who wants to start? Commissioner Clement. She knows I always look left first.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have one question to start off. So I understand that the traffic impact analysis, which is really what the Transportation Commission is interested in, did not contemplate the impacts of either the Marriott or the Art Institute site because technically speaking, those plans aren't settled, so we can't consider any information, or any information we might consider as speculation. So my question is, did the core of Roslyn plan inform the traffic impact analysis? I understand that the core of Roslyn plan had a lot of good data that wasn't speculative. So did the traffic impact analysis use that data?
Whom do you want to answer the question?
Oh.
The analysis was performed by Wells, so.
Yeah. Can Wells answer that question?
The core Roslyn study wasn't prepared by us.
Well, okay, so that begs the question, why produce all this excellent data, which is not speculative, if you're not going to use it? What's the point of the core Roslyn plan? We're not using the data that it gave us.
I might be able to answer part of that. The
Yeah.
core Roslyn study is a long-term projection, so it forecasts development populations and such for, I think, 2040, I want to say, was the design year. So that kind of analysis uses what Dennis mentioned earlier, which is Council of Governments data for population and such, and uses that within those zones, and also accounts for other, what they call a constrained long-range plan, which is improvements that are currently funded within those years, because it affects how traffic flows, not just around a particular area, but around the sites themselves. So it's a much longer distance view than the kind of traffic impact studies that we typically prepare, which are sort of short-term conditions. In other words, our build-out year is the year that the hotel and the residents will be complete. It's not 2040. So the goal of our study is sort of the on-the-ground conditions as they are today, the conditions as we think they will be within that 3-4 year period, or whatever that is, and then the immediate improvements within that framework and how those improvements fit into the sector plan and the core Roslyn study. So these are two different levels of analysis that you're looking at. So I think from the core Roslyn perspective, yes, over time, those kinds of population growth and such will play itself out. But in the short term, there are highs and lows where projects are approved and built and other projects are not.
And I think from a staff perspective, the core of Roslyn study recognizes that certainly for Lee Highway, we see that there are capacity issues. There are rolling queues that occur today, especially in the westbound, or pardon me, in the eastbound direction. In the morning, I think is probably the most pressured part of Lee Highway. And I think that the core of Roslyn study is looking at some longer-term solutions to that problem. Because I do think that the issues that you've heard from the Nash Street residents, their problem with Nash Street queuing is really not about Nash Street as much as it is about Lee Highway. And until we can solve the problems of the queuing and the traffic crush on Lee Highway, I don't think that there's really much that we can do to resolve the issues of Nash Street. So Core of Roslyn is looking at that. It's really also looking at some multimodal solutions for Roslyn, recognizing that we do not have good north-south bicycle access, that our pedestrian access could also be improved, that perhaps Fort Myer Drive and Lynn Street should be made bidirectional instead of one directional, so that it may not be informing this specific TIA, but I do think that its data gets much more granular than I think a number of people in this room recognize. And that's the point that I was trying to make in the presentation.
Other commissioner questions? Commissioner Lentami?
The delivery has come up a number of times, so I have some questions about that, because what I read, I want to make sure I understood it correctly. The way the loading dock is now being configured, is it correct that a truck can now drive straight into it, park, turn around inside and drive out, other than tractor trailers?
Correct.
So all of the box trucks will be able to just drive right in, do what they need to do there, turn around inside the building, and then drive back straight out again. So there'll be no backing up on Nash Street.
That's correct.
Other than for tractor trailers. Okay, I did read it correctly then. Thank you. How many deliveries are being done with the current hotel now? Do we know that?
It's on. Greg Raines with the Ditmore Company. We basically have that many deliveries a week now, around 8 to 10 a day, depending on, when we talk about the larger trucks, the box trucks, the 25 to 40-foot trucks, that's really 3 times a week, because our food deliveries come for the banquet and the restaurant that's currently there Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We don't get deliveries for food on weekends. The other deliveries during the day, trash is daily on the hotel, the restaurant. You're not going to leave that. The other ones are, AV companies or somebody fixing an oven, right? I mean, there's different loading dock entrances. But as far as trucks go, large trucks 3 times a week. We don't have the volume. We do have conference space there, 15,000 square foot now. There are large trucks that come on occasion, right? So and a book fair, an expo. But the 53-foot truck is is rare, because it's usually convention-based and expo-based, not food delivery-based.
And the deliveries currently are being done off Nash Street?
They're currently on Nash Street, just on the other side of the building.
Do the trucks drive in and drive out?
No, that loading dock isn't as deep, so basically it's an open-air dock. And
are they backing in that?
They have to back in that one, yes.
Okay, so currently they're backing in?
Yes.
But with the new building, they won't be anymore, other than the tractor trailers?
Yeah, all the trucks back in for the most part now, but anything but a 53-foot trailer on the new property will pull in front load.
Okay.
Front. And trash truck is pull in front, empty, turn around inside and leave.
Okay, thank
Elaborate briefly, we were talking about right-sizing parking earlier, and I feel like we've really right-sized the loading dock here. I mean, I can barely think of another building that isn't a shopping mall in this region that has an interior loading dock with this many berths. We really thought hard about what the demand here was with these uses, and you couldn't really ask for a better facility to serve them in that sense, with capacity especially.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Now, I do have a question about Nash Street. I do understand the concerns of the neighborhood. I've driven that also, and I know in the morning, the Key Boulevard, Nash Street intersection is a nightmare. Getting onto 19th Street is almost impossible. I'm always surprised that there isn't a traffic light there. It might be because it's such an odd configuration, so close to the Fort Myer traffic light, they don't want to do it, but it's just a very, very difficult intersection all around. We got the one traffic report very, very late back today. So I'm not happy that it came so late, but I was able to quickly skim through it, and I got some information out of that I thought was interesting. The pedestrian counts for the Nash Street Lee Highway intersection wasn't surprising to me, but they're very, very low, even compared to just one block away by Fort Myer, where a lot of people are crossing that street all the time. That's consistent with what I see driving down Lee Highway. It's very rare I see anybody walking along the highway down toward Nash Street. I'm wondering, and of course we're trying to encourage people to walk, and the reason to redo the radii and to do bump outs is to encourage people to cross the street into Gateway Park and of course to the Marriott side. I get that. It's a great idea. But given the pedestrian volumes there, I don't think it's a high priority for doing it. I think that the neighborhood could probably, personally, I think that it would be okay to keep 3 lanes there on Nash Street, given how few pedestrians are actually crossing Nash Street there, given the counts that I saw from that report. I do support the slip lane going away, but the Nash Street, yeah, it's a mess of a street, it can be, and I don't think that it would harm our long-term interests, especially given that Lee Highway needs to be resolved first, as Mr. Sullivan said. Until Lee Highway is really resolved, I don't see the harm in keeping the 3 lanes on Nash Street. That's my opinion.
Other commissioner questions or comments? Yeah, actually wanted, sorry, Commissioner Airy.
I had a quick maybe question about the apartment utilization parking numbers. So it was about 1.01, I think was the final number. I'm guessing that is the mean. In other words, some numerator, some denominator divided by, you get it? Okay, so
This is, I'm sorry, you're talking about the residential with
the residential utilization, yep.
So you're asking specifically about the utilization or the site plan approval numbers?
Utilization numbers, because I'm assuming they're used to generate some kind of comparable as a justification for why this number exists, right? So were those all rental units, or was it a mixture of rental and condominium units? All rental? And then was there any kind of control for construction here and there? Any kind of control for construction year or site approval year? Because I'm guessing if you go from year to year, you're going to find very different built parking numbers.
I completely agree that over time, as you go back, you're probably going to find some higher ratios. We can double check them quickly. I remember just mentally from looking at all the site plan approvals that I tried knocking out that was too much older, but you know, I think Ditmar especially can speak to some of their projects in the last 10 years or so where they're parked. And Mike, did you find anything?
Well, I mean, if I was just looking at the site plan approved versus the utilization, and its utilization's below under all these circumstances. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand it. It would be, you know, somewhere close, but if they sort of matched up, in other words, if it was 100% utilized, right, that would say that their supply doesn't meet their demand.
Right.
But none of these, all of these utilization is a little bit less. So to me, that would say that in theory, there's always spaces left over. So that means their supply is a little more than their demand under that condition. So you're getting the actual demand, if you will, under that condition.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that for sure because we didn't survey all these ourselves, but I mean, that's sort of the way I would interpret it.
Yeah, it would.
We can speak to 6 of the projects are actually our projects of the comparables because of the numbers of units that we have in the Roslyn Boston corridor. They're all right by the metro. And our usage throughout our portfolio is about a 0.9. And so that's, I'm not sure what you meant by median, that's what our utilization is. Our average build number of spaces per unit is probably about a 1.15 or so. And of course, as you said, the properties that we built long ago might be 1.3, 1.2. The ones recent was 1.5, I think, in Virginia Square.
Mm-hmm.
We have one of our neighbors is with the Avalon Ballston, one next to Quincy. What's that called? Anyhow, they're at 1.1 one space per unit, right next to us, and they were built about the same time Quincy was. So, what we find is that we actually get folks from there who can't park come to our building because they can't park. So,
How much do you charge for parking in that building?
we do charge in all our buildings, yeah.
How much? About on average, how much?
125 for the first space, and depending on, a TAM space might be 220, and the premium space might be 200.
Okay. I was just trying to understand where those numbers came from and if they were all rental versus condominium, because obviously
They're all
condominium. Okay.
They're all rentals.
Thank you.
My apologies for not being able to answer this myself, but we didn't get paper plans for this particular project at this point. Can you talk, I believe there's a bus stop for the R55 on Lake Highway on this frontage. Are there plans to improve that bus stop as part of this project?
There's a bus stop, it's about mid-block between Nash and Fort Myer, and there's not a plan to improve it, but certainly during construction, there's a plan to relocate it, and then we're having conversations about the possible permanent relocation of it because of the impact it has on traffic coming down the highway. Something that we've talked to staff as well as the neighbors about.
Mr. Selig, do you have anything to add?
Yes. The bus stop is not highly utilized. It's mostly for deboardings as opposed to boardings. There's also a conflict with the bus stop and a potential protected bike lane. So we're looking for some longer-term solutions, which we have not yet found. Frankly, a relocation of the bus stop could also be useful for some of the traffic issues on the highway. If we were to relocate the bus stop slightly to the west, we found that buses offloading during the morning peak, especially the long-haul commuter buses, the OmniRide, they will drop off 14 people, and dwell there for 2 minutes or more at 8:10 in the morning, and that causes a queue. So if that bus stop were located a little bit to the west on the other side of Nash Street, and where the next stop is not until Quinn Street, and there's a much longer distance so that traffic could queue up, we think that would be a lot more favorable spot for that queuing to occur, and it might free up that box for a little bit. We're having discussions with our transit folks about it, so far not successful, but we think that would both help the queuing, and that could help us for locating the bike lane. So that's what we're talking about in terms of the transit stop on the highway.
Understood. My understanding is the R55 changes its route during morning rush hour and avoids that stop entirely due to the amount of traffic that happens in Roslyn. Is that
not as familiar? I think it's the 3Y and the 55 stop there, as well as the longer haul coaches.
As a user of 55, it uses that stop.
Interesting.
And people use that stop to cross over Key Bridge to go into Georgetown.
Interesting. The ART website says between 7 and 9 that R55 turns down Quinn and avoids that highway entirely.
It's totally optional for the driver.
Gotcha. Interesting. Fun times.
Yes, it does make for a fun time.
Other commission questions? Commissioner Boucher.
Thank you for the residents for coming this evening, late evening, so I know you're passionate about this project. I have a question for the applicant. Ms. Vincent mentioned about the tour buses for the hotel. Where will they be staged? Because that, I mean, there's a lot going on this little street. So what are the plans for staging those buses?
I think one of the speakers mentioned that we do project, we said that in our meetings with neighbors, we project less buses for this hotel. The drop-off and pickup would be on Fort Myer, but it would not be staging as far as overnight staging. We won't.
Well, there's always some idle time, if you will, because they're usually there. And I mean, look what the county did for Pentagon City for all those buses, which was very much needed. And, excuse me, and this hotel, you're saying conference center, I'm assuming it's going to have big meetings, people coming on buses, tour buses. I'm just curious, how will they be staged on Ash Street?
Yeah.
So we're one of the large tour buses.
No.
The large tour buses, as was mentioned, don't fit in the Porky share because of the turning radiuses, but the buses that are coming from the airport, what size buses do you call those? They're mini tour buses.
The shuttle buses that you might see on a conference bring in 25 people can fit Porky.
Those will fit in the Porky share, not
what I call the motor
What's
coach.
going to have to happen is the management is going to make an effort when people are disembarking a tour bus or similarly sized vehicle to try to help them move things along, but otherwise they're going to, park and everybody's going to get off as quickly as they can.
No,
I'm sorry.
Can't be prohibited.
I mean, just like anyone else coming to visit and use the facility, they'd be able to, park as best they can in the street and unload, I guess. And then obviously for parking, it would be at an off-site facility.
Right, it will be drop off and pick up. It won't be overnight parking.
Any other commission questions? Commissioner Lantalmy.
I'm still wondering about the amount of parking that's allocated to this, to the conference space. Oh, it is, I'm sorry, talk closer. I'm still concerned about the amount of parking that's being allocated to the conference space here. It still strikes me that for a highly urban, transit-rich spot, it's still an awful lot of parking spaces. And when I've gone to conferences, I've never driven to them. I've always flown in, I've taken the train. I've never had my own car. I've always, when I've gone to the convention center in DC, I've always taken the metro. I've never driven to that. When I've been, in other cities when I've gone, it's rare that I've rented a car. Either I'll take a taxi or, some other way, but it just strikes me that it just seems like that there's still a lot of parking here for the conference center, and I'm troubled by that.
Commissioner Harry.
And I guess the question for staff, and I mean, does staff have any concerns about the comparables that were used to generate the math in this table here on page 27? Because one of these is the Hilton Boston Logan. And I looked, and the Hilton Boston Logan has I-90 to its west and an airport to the northeast and the south. I don't understand how that is a good piece of a sample to include in a comparable. Does staff have any issues with that, or no?
We think that the more local comparables were more appropriate. So, yeah, I think that the Logan one, and I'm also not familiar with Penn Landing in Philadelphia. We did ask for additional comparables that were more local. We have, excuse me, we may not receive those, but I do think that there were additional hotels in the DC area that may meet some of the criteria that they have established, that I'd be curious to see what the parking ratio is. I do think that fundamentally, this is not the same as a convention center. Commissioner Lantalmy, and that's what I think some of us are having. I struggle with the same thing. If I'm going to a conference in San Francisco or Chicago, it's different. I think some of the events that they are describing to us are events that's perhaps business leaders from Fairfax County, all of Northern Virginia may be attending. Police and Firemen's Association from the greater region would be coming in. It's kind of a different event. It may be a morning-long event of local business leaders, in which you would attend this and then you would be heading off to work. It may be a formal award ceremony, again, of local recipients. I don't want to put words in their mouths, but as they describe the types of events, it's seemed to me quite different from the types of, a 3 or 4 day conference that you and I might attend in Miami or even in Charlotte or something like that, where you may not use a vehicle. So they did present the vehicular use data that they have, and if the applicant wants to further defend that, they did provide quite a bit of documentation. We did ask for the comparables. They did provide that information, and this is a type of use that is going to be vehicle heavy.
I will add, though, that we did assume that a lot of people like you who would not be using a vehicle would be using this facility. Because I think if you look at the raw number of parking spaces versus the sheer number of attendees we could have at some of these events, 260 spaces or more with the flex use of the entire facility for 900 people does assume that a ton of people are using transit, that a ton of people are carpooling, that they're walking there, that they're using other means to get there. So in no way is it, and I know that you know this, but we're not providing, a space per half of the attendees or something like that. It's a far lower ratio.
If I could just add to that, of those events we looked at, just to put it in perspective, the event that has the lowest deficit of parking of those events is the event that has the most attendees. And the reason it does is because that's sort of the 9 to 5 event that I described. And under that condition, we did account for a higher non-auto mode share and capture from a portion of patrons that would be staying at the hotel. So each one of those events, which is what I was describing, has those dynamics at play for each one. And because they are so dynamic and there are highs and lows of each one of those events, that's why when we, took on this project, we said, well, wait a minute, we can't do a static calculation here because it doesn't make sense. We didn't know, excuse me, when we started, where we were in parking, to tell you the truth. We took it and said, okay, now it's time to try and figure this out. Well, how do we figure this out? We looked at what's a typical event? The full capacity is 1,800 or something like that for persons. We had an 800-person event. We sort of used that as looking at the ballroom setups and those kinds of things for sort of the practical use of how the space would be used. So we tried to take a practical approach to it and then see how things shook out, and then understanding that, these are peak conditions. So these are sort of these maximum events, which I think Dennis did a good job of describing. Sort of the biggest event is sort of the regional event, where people live close enough that they can come to an event for a day or for a morning or whatever it is. The event I described earlier, sort of the 9 to 5, those are some people that come from out of town because they're going to be here longer. And so even under those conditions, we'd still be relying on off-site parking or a forced non-auto mode share. So there'll be a TDM plan, for the project itself, but I'm sure as any other hotel will have sort of that information. Here are your 3 ways to get here. And I think people will learn to use that. I think our approach was, okay, if we have deficits under these sort of maximum conditions, which we're not designing for, we're designing for 50 or 60% of the year, so we can accommodate those within the building to make sure we've got a successful building that's going to function. That was our approach looking at it. We don't want to build any more parking than we need to. We understand that. What we're trying to do is get to a spot where we're not designing for these maximum events, but we're not leaving ourselves so short that we end up with problems and we can't support the kind of events that we plan to have. That's how it shook out for us.
While we're talking about parking, I want to ask a couple really specific questions about that grid on page 27 of our board report, which is the comps. First off, these are total number of built spaces, right? This is not utilization information.
For which ones?
So I'm talking about the hotel keys, the conference center.
Yeah, these are just total numbers, the best information we could get from each one.
Okay, so unlikely, but all of these could be only half full all day for all we know.
Sure.
Okay. Second off, on the far right, that parking ratio for conference center space, assuming a half space per key ratio, what is that a ratio of? Because it's definitely not like spaces per square foot or any. There's no units, and I can't figure out where the math is coming from. Page 27 of our board report, far right column of that big table, parking ratio for conference center space, assuming a half space per key ratio.
Unfortunately, I have a more updated version of the board report, so the pages are off.
Okay.
The PC ones.
It's in figure 14, if that helps at all.
Well, found it.
Okay, assuming 0.5 spaces per.
Basically, you back out the hotel spaces, what was left?
This
That can't
looks
be.
like,
If you got 618 spaces divided by 39,000 square feet of a conference center, is it square feet per space? Is it upside down?
because this takes.
It's square feet per space. Okay, I think we figured it out.
Yes.
It's square feet of conference center per parking space? Is that correct?
Square feet. Oh, the last. Yes, I believe so, because you take 265, what's, sorry, 39,983. Yeah, it's 39,983 divided by 265.
Thank
So
you.
square foot, yep.
Gotcha. It's just, there are so many different figures and tables and stuff talking about parking and ratios, and the ratios are in different. Some places it's per key, and some places it's per square foot, and some places
You can
it's per
appreciate the difficulty of
space.
getting the comparables here and figuring out how to compare something when some of these facilities are just so different. They have different numbers of hotel rooms versus the conference space, things like that, so.
Thank you. All right. I want to go back to talk about Nash unless other people have things they want to talk about as far as the parking ratio before we head that direction. All right. I find myself agreeing with Commissioner Lantelmi. I am not usually one to recommend adding or retaining a traffic lane. I am Mr. Pedestrian Safety and multimodalism, but I find myself swayed by, in the grand scheme of things, how unimportant and low volume that particular pedestrian crossing is. Along Lee Highway, crossing Nash Street. Because west of here on Lee Highway, at least this portion of Lee Highway, there is nothing. It is a sound wall. It is a noise wall for blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks. I am swayed by the neighbors in many ways about how difficult it can be to get out of Nash, both to the north and to the south. It is very important to me that we make it as easy as possible to get across to Gateway Park as a pedestrian, which I think is a far more important pedestrian movement. And part of my concern is if we are making it harder to turn right on red on Lee Highway, that we are making more people turn right on green. And when they're turning right on green, they're turning right at the same time that pedestrians are crossing Lee Highway with the walk light in the crosswalk. And so I find myself agreeing with Commissioner Lantelmi that this may be a point in time where not only do we not do that curb bump out on Nash Street, but that we formalize a right turn lane and a straight through left lane or whatever is most appropriate there to retain the ability to get out of Nash from all of these garages at the Dakota and Georgetown Vista and the people coming in and out of this apartment building. How do other commissioners find themselves feeling about this portion of the street? Commissioner Clement?
I would definitely agree with your assessment of the situation. I actually, in my bike travels, use cross Lee Highway at Nash on a fairly regular basis, and it is in the morning. It's usually between 7 and 8, and there's nobody there but me. I actually like the turn lane because it provides safety for me as I'm waiting at the light. Other cars are not turning into me. I sort of have that little space for myself, waiting for the light to change so that I can then proceed across Nash Street. But my principal concern is the lack of inclusion of the impacts of both Marriott and the Art Institute sites in the transportation impact analysis. I think that that is not good. That's not good planning. I think it indicates that that particular study was premature. And also, regarding the loss of facilities such as the turn lane at Nash and the bus parking, when you double the density of a neighborhood like that, which is what this is going to do, you're going to double the traffic in an already congested neighborhood. I don't see how you can make a neighborhood safe for pedestrians in that situation by eliminating needed traffic facilities. I think that's unrealistic.
Commissioner Gray?
I would be curious to hear staff's response to this before I say anything else. Because I have some concerns as a frequent pedestrian. I have concerns.
Sorry. Does staff
have any response to the idea of not eliminating essentially that right turn lane from Nash onto Lee?
Or even formalizing it?
Formalizing it.
So, okay, well, that was actually, so that was put in at our request. And it was our feeling that what we were attempting to do was to shorten the crossing distance to Gateway Park, 1, and 2, to make it safer. It's a pretty wide radius there, and so we did take some staff observations. During the morning, it was late June, and it was not, it was not a typical, when you do a traffic analysis. It happened to be when our staff was available. It was a Monday morning. We went out from 8 to 8:30. And what we did observe was that in order, the way that it is configured today, a vehicle needs to literally be on the line for another vehicle to line up next to it to make the turn. So if the vehicle is not on the yellow line or, wherever the line is, you cannot fit two vehicles there because it wasn't really designed for two. It's sort of like there is a casual and informal understanding that two vehicles can squeeze through there. If you're not configured that way, it doesn't work. And if you are, what does happen is that because of the extensive queuing that occurs, the behavior, and we actually saw, counter to what you may see in the numbers, there were a significant number of people that were crossing Lee Highway. And what we saw were conflicts that one might describe as dangerous because the vehicle, the driver behavior, because of so much queuing and so few gaps, was essentially a dart out. It was like, as soon as you see an available gap, you just basically gun it. And so there was not as much engagement between driver and pedestrian. There were pedestrians in both directions, and we saw at least 2 instances where we thought, that was not a very safe move, and where there were potential conflicts, the pedestrian held back because the driver was essentially gunning it through the intersection. And that was just a one-day observation for 30 minutes. So we thought, well, that confirms our sense for needing to make this a tighter radius here. And also the fact that the data does not show a substantial increase in either the wait time or the vehicle queuing length to warrant the maintaining it as is or formalizing it. So that was our rationale.
Okay.
And also we think, again, are there few people crossing because there's few people or because it's not safe? It's one of those things you don't know in the breach. If it's made safer, do you get more people? If you have a development here and then you have a development across at the Marriott, is it a better place to have a shorter crossing?
So for me, there's 3 distinct things operating here, right? There's crossing distance to cross Lee Highway. There's crossing distance to cross Nash Street. And there's the overall curb radius, which slows down how people turn, which is great, because people turning really fast is super dangerous for pedestrians. And I am all for improving, tightening up the curb radius. I am all for shortening the crossing distance for people crossing Lee Highway. I am less concerned about the crossing distance across Nash due to the low number of pedestrians and the fact that I think it's because there is nothing to go to crossing Nash to continue on Lee Highway.
So if we're talking about Nash, that's a different story. And the reason we needed to do that more for geometric purposes was that with the curb radius as it is in Nash, the crosswalk had to be moved too far back from the intersection. The only way we could get the crosswalk moved forward, and then being that far back from the intersection, it presented a driver visibility, again, another safety thing, that the driver would not see the pedestrian in the crosswalk. We wanted to get the crosswalk further forward. There was a pole in the way, so to keep the pole where it is and not have to relocate the pole, we had to tighten. We asked the consultant, could you tighten the intersection, the curb radius here? And that was the reason for that one. It wasn't like, oh yeah, we know there's going to be hordes of people crossing Nash Street. And also potentially ulterior motive, if we are able to convince transit to relocate the bus stop on that side of Nash Street, if we do provide a somewhat better crossing there, spruce it up a little bit, make it a little bit better, that might entice them to say, oh sure, we will like to be on this side of Nash Street. So there were some safety reasons. It wasn't because of pedestrian volumes, certainly, and we know that those volumes are not likely to change, but there was some thinking behind that.
Great, thank you. That is extremely useful. I rescind my support for Commissioner Lentoli's motion.
And just one more thing, when you said there's nothing at the end of that sound wall, there actually is the new Homewood Suites, which is right at Quinn and Lee Highway. So, and they do, which, another hotel, and I know they have a shuttle that runs to the metro, but again, who knows how many people are going to want to.
Look, in wintertime, when the snow comes, that sidewalk is never passed.
No.
The snow goes on it, and until it melts, no one shovels it.
I agree.
It's never used.
But I'm not in favor of changing the proposal of doing away with a turn lane.
But I also agree that the radii are way too big. It really should be tightened up, that alone will make it easier for pedestrians to cross and will slow down traffic at the same time. Because of that, I really don't see the need to actually narrow the street. And if people are informally using it as 2 lanes, even though it doesn't technically mean 2 lanes, that'll work. I mean, there's informal ways of doing things which really, sometimes you leave it alone because it works in its own way. I agree with tighten the radius, but not narrow the street any further.
Any other commissioner questions, comments? Commissioner Boucher.
I disagree with Commissioner Clement. I've been really swayed by that, to use your term, swayed, I like that word, by the citizens, because none of them are against the project. They're not against it, they're just concerned. And I agree, I think Mr. Cook, you used the term vacuum, with all these other projects that are kind of in the queue. It just seems, the whole area needs to be considered, because Nash Street, I used to go to the Holiday Inn a lot back in the day. I think there's a restaurant on top, right? Yeah, it has great views. Food was good. I don't think the restaurant upstairs was, I don't think it's owned by the Holiday Inn. I think it's from some investors, right? Is it still there? I stopped going there after when they were building the Turnberry, because you couldn't get to it. It's awful. But it was a great place, and I just can't, and I'm kind of thinking all this that's going to be in that space, it's a lot. But to be honest with you, I came to the meeting and I thought, well, hey, I'm not going to live there. Yeah, it'd be great for me. But really, hearing the citizens and the people who live there, I get it. And again, none of you said you're against it. They didn't say they're against it. They just said they're concerned and they want to kind of have some more time, I think, and work some things out. So that's kind of where I am. But thank you, Commissioner Clement, for bringing up those points.
Commissioner Price.
Thank you for all the presentations and for all your patience in answering our crazy questions, our questions and our crazy questions. I've got just one statement and then I have one question. First, I'll make 2 statements. One, I think the project itself, I think, is good. I love the way this building looks. I think it's going to really improve that particular corner. It's spectacular and a true improvement to the Holiday Inn, which I have opinions about, but I'll leave to myself. I'm going to say outright, I'm just truly, really disappointed about this parking situation and the number of spaces that you're looking for. I was reading through the report that was sent to me by Mr. Best, and I remember reading somewhere in the report about, well, conference planners and conference organizers are not going to consider you less because you don't have, or you might not have space. They consider it more if you have space within the facility for attendees. And as someone who's worked for a rather large organization, it plans conferences and has conference planners on staff. I reached out to them and I asked them to reach out to their network of conference planners from other organizations that plan meetings and conferences, and none of whom actually responded saying that parking was an issue, is not a factor, whether or not they're going to consider a meeting space for their conferences. So that kind of struck me in a very negative way. And I think I expressed my opinions at the last info session. I'm unhappy with the parking situation. I think this is a city growing next to a city, and I think the more spaces we provide, I think I said this before, if you build this parking, it will be used, and I don't think it will benefit members of the community. I'll leave that said. Second, my question, they had mentioned, members of the community had mentioned, and thank you for your presentations, had mentioned about queuing of construction vehicles. Is there a plan that you have in mind for the queuing of construction vehicles? And if so, can you enlighten us? What's the plan? When will where will they queue?
I'll let Bob answer, but obviously anything that we think we know about construction right now is obviously hypothetical because we're not quite at that point, but.
We are still working through the MOT. Obviously, the construction vehicles are going to have to get to the site and get from the site. They're going to be coming, especially during excavation, throughout the day. This isn't the first building that we've built in Arlington. This is about the 20th building that we built, so we have a lot of experience. We're our own general contractor, so we're conscious of the issues that the community has brought up. And again, like anyone else, we will do the best that we can to limit the impact of the construction vehicles and the construction on the community, but you've got to build a building.
And in terms of your excavators that you bring, will you anticipate having to shut down Nash or shut down Fort Myer Drive at any particular point? I mean, just
not for the excavation, no.
Or any of the construction, I guess.
Some of the construction, actually, part of the highway will have to be when we relocate the utilities. That particularly will be at night. But Fort Myer will stay open. Nash, actually, the excavation will happen on Fort Myer. Be very limited on the side of Nash Street until we get out. Nash Street's about 20 feet below, or above Fort Myer, I'm sorry. So functionally, we're going to be coming in and out on Fort Myer Drive.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I do just want to talk about this notion of isolation and how we do our planning and everything. I understand the concern, but I also understand the reality of any project. Every project has boundaries and scope. And we ask our applicants to do a lot of analysis, and we ask them to include everything that we know for certain is coming. And that's great. If we rescoped every transportation analysis anytime a new project was proposed, there are projects that would probably never happen. Like, they would never get out of the planning process. Some of these projects that we're talking about were not proposed when the initial transportation analysis was done for this project. And at the rate development happens in Arlington County, by the time we redid the analysis to include a hypothetical new development, another development would be proposed. And then, are we doing it again, and where does it end? So I believe we have a robust process. I believe we have a process that is trying to balance the amount of analysis that is done and the money that is spent doing that analysis and the money that is spent redoing that analysis, with having a planning process that gives us useful information to make our decisions. And so, would it be great to have a hypothetical of what Nash is going to look like with what's proposed at Marriott and with what's coming to Ames Center or whatever? Yes, but it would also be additional expense. It would also be redoing work that's already been done multiple times. So I think, it's all a balancing act, and I think we're currently at a good balance. So I understand the concern, but I don't see it as a reason to hold up a project or stop a project or anything like that. Do other commissioners have any final comments or questions before we start heading towards a motion? Commissioner Bush.
I get that, and I know definitely in construction, infrastructure, time is money. I totally get that, but I do think this is a really big exception. I think, it's having served at a senior level at USDOT, I always had to laugh at Virginia with all due respect, because I dealt with the Secretary of Transportation in Richmond, in Virginia, for every project, it seemed, whereas most states you deal with the mayor or, and I know it's because of Dillon Law, I get that, but I just think this one is really exceptional, and just knowing the neighborhood, and Nash Street is so small, I just think this is an exception. But Mr. Chairman, I absolutely agree with you, and I do understand.
All right. I move that the Transportation Commission recommend that the County Board approve the rezoning from CO Mixed Use District and S3A Special District to CO Roslyn Mixed Use Roslyn District for the property known as 1900 North Fort Myer Drive, 20th Street North in Parcel Q, and also approve the major site plan amendment to redevelop the site with 502 residential units, 375 hotel keys, with a approximately 37,417 square foot conference center and 14,412 foot square retail gross floor area for a total of 782,080 square feet, with modifications as listed in our Transportation Commission draft of the board report dated August 12th, and additionally find that the ordinance to vacate a portion of the right-of-way for 20th Street North is substantially in accordance with the comprehensive plan of Arlington County, and find that the vacation of a portion of easement for public street and utility purposes located parallel to North Fort Myer Drive is substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or applicable portion thereof of Arlington County, Virginia, as outlined in our county board report dated September 21st, 2019. Is there a second? Commissioner Yuri will second. Is there a discussion of the motion?
Can I offer an amendment?
Commissioner Lynn, tell me. Anytime.
Provided that North Nash Street at Lee Highway not be narrowed beyond reducing the curb radii.
Is there a second for that amendment?
I'll second it.
Yeah, it's seconded. Is there a discussion of that amendment? I will say I don't think you can, as gone into in gory detail a bit by Mr. Selig, I don't think you can substantially improve that curb radii safely without narrowing Nash due to where the crosswalk needs to be placed and the needs for driver visibility of that crosswalk placement. Mr. Selig, do you want to go through that again?
Yes, and if I need help from Karen White, can we have their slide? Yes. So I'm just going to use this here. So when we asked the consultant to relocate the curb radius for Nash Street, what we found was that the pedestrian crosswalk was coming out something more like back here. And that was why we asked them to adjust this side, because on the west side of Nash Street, there was a much wider radius, and because of where a signal pole was, we couldn't get a pedestrian ramp located properly, and so it was located here. Now that takes care of the west side of Nash Street. If you were to retain the existing, and I think, Karen, if I'm correct, if where I'm tracing now is the existing radius?
No, that's the property lines. Can I try?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that, sorry we have this nice rendering so you don't see the existing conditions underneath it, but the radius is kind of more, I would say kind of in this area, kind of like this, because this was bumped out about 15 to 20 feet here, so I think it's kind of more like that in there. Is there another one? Okay. Can we go back to the next? Here we go. This might work. So you can see here, this is the old location, and we bumped it out about 15 feet is where it is right here. So I think if you kind of tighten this up, I think what you're suggesting is taking this but kind of making it a tighter radius like that, right? So
So that's different from what I was describing.
Okay.
I was describing basically tightening the radii. I think Commissioner Lantelmi is talking about retaining some sort of turn. I'm not positive how that looks. I think our goal is to retain a safer and shorter pedestrian crossing across Lee Highway on the east side. And if that can be done along with that preservation of that wiggle room lane, I still am concerned about the aspects of driver behavior there. That would be a concern of mine. And also, I would like to know what the crossing distance is. What would be the final pedestrian crossing distance? What are some of the visibility issues? It's not clear to me.
Okay. It would strike me that by tightening the radii a bit, you will in fact reduce the amount of the distance for pedestrians to cross there, even if you kept the current width of the street. As far as driver behavior, whether it's one lane or two, they're going to still be gunning it through there, just because they're going to try to take advantage of those gaps. Because you're right that the Lee Highway traffic is the problem here, and that's what's causing the backups and the driver behavior.
It was also pointed out, we might also lose one of the parking spaces that we're gaining here. It would have to really be looked at, re-engineered, because I don't know that we can do this here at the table.
And I have no problem with that either, but I think we should at least see if there's a way to do it that would meet the community's concerns and at the same time make it a safer intersection.
Other
We can
discussion?
always look at it. I have no objection to doing that.
Okay.
Other commissioner discussion of the amendment? I will say I don't personally support the amendment as worded, but I would be willing to support an amendment that recommended, that the Transportation Commission recommended that staff take another look at this intersection and whether a right turn lane, formalized right turn lane could be safely accommodated, with a safe crossing of Lee Highway.
Yeah, I'm willing to withdraw my amendment in favor of your amendment language.
Does anyone object to changing the amendment wording to that way?
But then are we going to get, we're not going to vote on this again, right? This is it. So if this happens, it's going to happen
It's going to be up to the board.
Be up to the board.
Correct. That's how it flies.
Can we put it in a letter instead? Instead of making it a formal amendment?
Well, we've already got an amendment on the floor, so I think we're going to end up with an amendment in some way, shape, or form. Hearing no objection, that wasn't an objection to changing the amendment, Mr. Price? Okay. The motion to amend is now adding to the motion that the Transportation Commission recommends that staff take another look at whether a formalized right turn lane can be accommodated for northbound Nash onto eastbound Lee Highway while keeping a safe and shorter crossing of Lee Highway. Okay. Any discussion of that amendment? All those in favor of that amendment? 1, 2, just the 2. All right. All those opposed? The motion fails. The amendment fails. Is there any further discussion of the motion or additional amendments someone would like to make to the motion? All right. All those in favor of the original motion, which is essentially the county manager's recommendation across the board? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? That's 2. Would Commissioner Clement and Commissioner Bouchou like to speak directly to their opposition to make sure I can note it properly in the letter?
Yes, I agree with the neighbors that there has been an inadequate traffic impact analysis of this site.
Commissioner Boucher? Same, got it.
Ditto.
Awesome. Thank you to the applicant, thank you to staff, thank you for all of the residents who came out and spoke. We appreciate your input. Now it goes to Planning Commission and then to the board.
Our next item is, in fact, why don't we take 7 and 8 at the same time?
All right.
7 is the VDOT funding applications. 8 is the NVTA funding applications. Rich Roisman is here this evening to give you an overview on both.
Good evening, Commissioners. Given that it is 11 p.m., I will be brief. Item number 7 is approval to submit applications to the Virginia Department of Transportation for 2 solicitations for fiscal 21 and 22 funds, one for the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program set aside for transportation alternatives, more colloquially known as the Transportation Alternatives Program, and for revenue sharing. Again, this is a every other year solicitation. Transportation Alternatives is a federal aid program administered by VDOT for a variety of smaller scale non-highway transportation projects like ped bike, recreational trails, and safe routes to school. The revenue is a 80-20 breakdown, 80% state federal with a 20% local match. We are recommending applying for one program for $2 million in this cycle. This is for the Arlington Boulevard Trail Enhancements section between Courthouse and Roslyn. The VDOT revenue sharing program is a state program. It is a dollar for dollar match, 50-50 cost sharing between state and local funds. The priorities and evaluation criteria are outlined in the board report. Mr. Best has circulated in print the digital version of a draft dated today. I apologize, the draft that was distributed initially should have been labeled draft. It was not. I will explain the discrepancy that's seen in the red line. It impacts the revenue sharing program. We are recommending applying for 3 projects prioritized below. 2 of them are for bridge replacements of bridges over 4 Mile Run. The first is the Mount Vernon Avenue / Arlington Ridge Road Bridge for $5 million. $890,000 for the West Glebe Bridge replacement over 4 Mile Run. And then the third project is just $110,000 for sidewalk improvements at 18th Street North and North Glebe Road adjacent to Glebe Elementary School. The discrepancy in the dollar amount for the Mount Vernon Avenue Bridge replacement is tied up in a cost-sharing agreement between Arlington County and the City of Alexandria to cover all of the crossings of 4 Mile Run. Those discussions are going on at the county manager level, and so we were not necessarily privy to them in the first draft of the board report. We're basically seeking a 50-50 cost share, but again, those discussions are going on at that a higher level. But the shift was to basically equalize the asks based on what we know the city is currently asking for under the same program. There is a $10 million project limit in revenue sharing, so we cannot ask for more than $5 million a piece on any one of these given projects. We can add additional local money, which I think will be, again, part of the cost sharing discussion, which will need to be resolved by the end of the month when the applications are due to VDOT. So that goes on between our county manager and the city manager in Alexandria. But both, we're getting to the table in terms of commitment to cover all those bridges, and revenue sharing is the first funding source that both of us will be seeking to repair those bridges, repair and replace those bridges in this case. So I'm happy to stop for any questions on TAP and revenue sharing, but we are asking for commission endorsement of the staff recommendation in the board report to go through and follow through with these applications.
Quick question, why, so I know the revenue sharing is prioritized in like priority order. Why is the Mount Vernon Avenue Bridge prioritized over the West Glebe Bridge?
The West Glebe Bridge is expected to move first and will not need as much revenue sharing. So that's why Mount Vernon is higher on.
All right, great. Anybody else? All right. Can we talk about NVTA and we'll just make one big motion for both?
That's fine with me. Item 8 is request for approval to apply to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. This is for fiscal year 24 and 25 funding as part of their 6-year program update. Staff is recommending applying for 4 projects totaling $35.5 million. These are not necessarily in priority order. That's not required as part of this. So 4 projects. The first is the CC to DCA intermodal connector from Crystal City to National Airport. Second, and it matches well with some of the previous discussion about Roslyn, is a package of multimodal network improvements totaling $12 million, largely bicycle and pedestrian improvements. These are taken out of the draft implementation plan for the Core of Roslyn study. Third project is what staff has called Glebe Squared, intersection improvements at South Glebe and West Glebe. This is adjacent to the bridge. This would happen post-bridge repair, just based on project phasing and the availability of funds. And the final recommendation is for $2 million to effectively restart design for the Arlington National Cemetery Wall Trail. Previous design work is largely focused on the east side of Route 110. This moves the project over to the west from Park Service land to VDOT right away.
Any commission questions?
Just
Commissioner Bryce?
Does the CC to DCA intermodal connector project include a pedestrian walkway to DCA from Crystal City?
It is a pedestrian and bike facility.
That's not clear from the report, or am I just missing something?
The wording here. Yeah, I mean, it's the bridge that everyone has seen the pretty renderings of. So.
Thank you.
I would be amiss in pointing out something that is missing from this report and clarifying why that is. Commissioners may remember that during the previous round of NVTA solicitation, we applied for $72 million in funding for the Ballston West entrance. That application was rejected by the authority due to the lack of project progress on that particular facility. We are having discussions of an alternative funding plan to what is in the adopted CIP to move that project forward that will likely result in a smaller ask of the NVTA, but those negotiations are still ongoing, and so as written now, that project is not included. There may be applications submitted. The applications are due to the authority on the 27th. If that is the case, we will need to come back to get board endorsement, and if that is the case, I will bring the project back to the commission.
All right. All right, I move that the Transportation Commission recommend that the county board adopt the attached resolution authorizing Arlington County's participation in VDOT's fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2022 transportation alternatives set aside under the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, and adopt the attached resolution authorizing Arlington County's participation in VDOT's FY21 to 22 revenue sharing program, and recommend that they adopt the attached resolution authorizing Arlington County's application to NVTA for funding in an amount up to $35.5 million for 4 projects under the FY24 and FY25 6-year program update, and we don't do that part, as outlined in our draft board report dated September 5th, 2019, and draft board report dated September 3rd, 2019, respectively. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies for the late hour.
Our final item for this evening is other business. Our next meeting is on October 3rd. That's all staff has for this evening.
Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Then we are adjourned.
Perfect. Good night.
Ha!